Chapter 4770. Brother, do you want me to use some special methods to let her enjoy herself? Sikong Fuling took out a flute and smiled sweetly in Madame Long's direction. However, even though her smile was beautiful, it made Madame Long's hair stand on end. She was horrified. Ding Yun reached out and patted her shoulder. Then I'll leave it to you, Fuling. All right. Sikong Fuling grinned and placed the flute in front of her. Just as she was about to blow the nightmare demonic flute, she heard Long Chu's pitiful cries behind her. Yin can you let Ji and Shangyun go? The two of them never had anything to do with you. Sikong Fuling smirked and interrupted Long Chu's begging with the sound of the flute. On the other side, Long Shangyun and Long Huan's group, who were heading toward the Forgetful River's cold valley, were surrounded by the demon sect's followers. The two parties began an intense battle on the sea. More than half of Long Huan's 3,000 personal guards had been exhausted in the previous battle. Now that they were surrounded by the demon sect's fresh troops, they were naturally defeated. Long Shangyun's lips were slightly pale. She held the bottle of soul-calming pills that Arbor had given her tightly. Her eyes were filled with anxiety as she kept glancing at Long Huan, who was fighting with the others. Long Huan was being surrounded by 3 Mystique Venerable rank experts, and was barely able to defend himself. If not for the people from Aohai protecting him with their lives, he would have been captured long ago. Long Shangyun could tell that this group of people was very ruthless. Every strike was fatal to her brother. They did not seem to be out to capture people. They seemed to be out to kill. Long Shangyun's eyes narrowed slightly as she watched one of the men in black slash Long Huan's arm with his saber. Brother! The instant Long Shangyun cried out in surprise, 2 or 3 impolite gazes swept towards her face. Seeing those people rushing towards her, Long Shangyun started to panic. Who could she beat in her current state? She would still be captured easily. She could not implicate her brother. With that thought, Long Shangyun immediately got up with difficulty and jumped into the sea, sinking into the water with a splash. Long Huan looked back and hurriedly called out, Jiangsong, quickly go and take a look. The dragon guard named Jiangsong immediately jumped down with Long Shangyun. At the same time, the entire ship rumbled. A few Mystique Venerable rank cultivators threw divine power orbs onto the ship with cold expressions. Soon, the entire ship was set ablaze. Long Shangyun had just popped her head out when she was blasted out by the shockwaves from the ship. The last thing she saw was Aohai pouncing on her brother and blocking a knife for him. However, in the end, the cold blade still pierced through the elder brother's chest. Brother! Long Shangyun's head was hit by the fragments of the ship, and she sank into the water. By the time Ding Yin left Ding Xian, Long Chuyu and the others behind and walked out of the house, the sun had already set in the west. The sunset glow faintly shrouded the horizon, revealing a somewhat dense color. Look at what you've done. A cold rebuke came from outside the door. Ding Yin looked up, and his gaze landed on a man wearing a silver ghost mask who was rushing over. Ding Yin smiled nonchalantly. Since the hall master is here, let's talk in the side room. Sect Master Ding, you're being very unkind. Chapter 4771. The red-clothed man leaned to the side and abruptly interjected. You took action in advance but didn't say anything. How do you expect us to continue cooperating with you? Cult Master Ding smiled faintly. Young Master is joking. This is a personal grudge between me and the Dragon Clan, so there's no need for everyone to intervene. The Ghostface Hall Master glared at him coldly. Cult Master Ding, you don't need me to trouble myself to remind you, right? We're in a cooperative relationship. Please inform us before you take action. Okay. Ding Yun readily nodded in agreement. Everyone, just treat this as an accident that I didn't consider carefully before taking action. I'll definitely inform everyone in a timely manner in the future. What do you plan to do now? Fan Meng and Fan Yu, who followed the Ghostface Hall Master here, couldn't help but frown. I'll resolve some old grudges between me and the Dragon Clan, Ding Yun said with a smile. Everyone should be aware of my relationship with the Dragon Clan of Wangchuan. Gong Songfeng gazed deeply at Ding Yun, a faintly discernible coldness creeping onto his lips. This humble one truly admires Cult Master Ding's meticulous planning. Ding Yun raised his brows noncommittally. Gong Songfeng was about to speak with a fake smile when he saw several demonic cult disciples rush in. When they saw them present, they were clearly taken aback and hesitated on whether they should go forward to report. Is there something that you can't say? Fan Meng said coldly. Cult Master Ding, you sent people to secretly search for something on the surface of the sea. Are you still trying to hide it from us? Ding Yin smiled. Vice Hall Master Ming worries too much. You secretly prepared over 1,000 divine stone cannons to attack the dragon clan of Wangchuan. Attacking at the same time, you must have affected Zhou on the surface of the sea, right? Ding Yin was silent for a moment before saying teasingly, Ayaya, I was wondering why you came in such a hurry. So you came for that stoic face. If it's because of this, you can rest assured. The little stoic has been a little fellow with good karma from beginning to end. Nothing can happen to her except for anyone else. Gong Songfeng sneered. You're truly ruthless. Ding Yin raised his eyebrows. No one would have thought that you were the one who had been watching the situation from the sidelines. Fan Meng looked at Cult Master Ding in front of her with an indifferent expression. You deceived them so miserably. Fan Meng's lips curled into a sinister smile. That Dragon Clan leader actually believed your nonsense. He thought that as the Dragon Clan's leader, he really had the ability to release that human-shaped sacred beast. Young Master Ding looked at Fan Meng with interest and suddenly laughed loudly. It's her own stupidity, all right? I'm just looking for two people to intentionally or unintentionally mention the legendary humanoid sacred beast in the sacrificial sea abyss to her. It's that old woman's selfishness and greed that's causing trouble. If it wasn't for that, how could she possibly be used by me? Ding Yin sneered. After all, this is our last chance, isn't it? What's more, your heavenly fate also played an indelible role in this. Ding Yin said with a chuckle. After all, I didn't refine the medicinal liquid that made the humanoid sacred beast go berserk. It was provided by your organization. Speaking of which, the heavenly fate truly had many talents. It was truly surprising that they could refine a medicinal liquid that could make a sacred beast go berserk. Chapter 4772. If it weren't for your esteemed organization's top-notch frenzy-inducing medicinal liquid, I wouldn't have been able to do it. That bottle of catalytic medicine in the old hag's hands wouldn't have been able to accomplish anything, all right? What a joke. That old hag actually thought that her group of useless clansmen could really refine the ingredients needed to make the frenzy-inducing medicinal liquid from the holy beast Black Dragon? Ding Yin couldn't help but snicker. What a joke. The reason why the frenzy-inducing medicinal liquid in her hands could successfully make that snake-bodied and human-shaped holy beast go berserk was because he secretly replaced the original bottles of useless medicinal liquid for her. The reason why the frenzy-inducing medicinal liquid Long Qian throughout was due to the contributions of that group of genius alchemists from All Seer. Fan Meng looked at young Sir Ding coldly. You're really quite ruthless. Back then, you secretly summoned that human-shaped holy beast in the dark in front of the little stoic. Weren't you worried that the holy beast would tear her apart? What do I have to worry about? Darkness flashed through young Sir Ding's eyes. Wouldn't someone risk their life to protect her? Not only Fan Meng, but Gong Songfeng's eyes also involuntarily narrowed. So, this guy was certain that Mo Lian would risk her life to save the little stoic? His true target was actually that crown prince of the divine province? Everyone looked at this cult master Ding, whose mind was full of twists and turns, in astonishment. Gong Songfeng was even more vigilant. He actually felt like he was asking a tiger for its skin when cooperating with this great cult master, who was so adept at scheming. Ding Yin smiled faintly. See, I've told you everything. Then can you tell me where the little stoic went? He practically didn't need to summon those demonic cult disciples, who hurried over for questioning to know that they definitely couldn't find the little fellow in the sea of forgetfulness. Could it be that this facial paralysis hid in his portable godly domain at the critical moment? This wasn't impossible, Ding Yin speculated inwardly. Fan Yu shook her head. We searched the surface of the sea, but couldn't find any trace of her. It seems that she was thrown very far away because of that tremor. Fan Yu paused. Or perhaps she returned to her portable divine realm? Ding Yin smiled faintly. I'm guessing that she probably went into hiding. This little guy was as cunning as a fox, slippery and hard to catch. Send people to search everywhere. Cult Master Ding sighed. No one knew where he had run off to. When Arbor regained consciousness, it was probably night time. Because when he opened his eyes, everything before him was pitch black. He hurriedly flipped over and sat up, vigilantly trying to pull out a ferrule from his conscience. However, as soon as he used his divine sense, he felt an incessant pain in his head, and he immediately became vigilant. When the little stoic recalled Master reminding her that she couldn't use her divine conscience for a while, she couldn't help but crease her brows. After groping around in her sleeves, the little stoic expressionlessly took out a bottle of soul-calming pills, poured out a pill, and tossed it into her mouth to chew. His eyes suddenly lit up. This pill was actually tangerine-flavored. It was strangely delicious. The door opened slightly, and she sensed someone approaching in the darkness. The little stoic groped around the low cabinet next to her pillow, casually picked up a bowl, and threw it at the newcomer. Who's sneaking around? That person clearly didn't expect the stoic to be awake, and was caught off guard, almost getting hit in the head by the medicine bowl. However, she heard a crisp pop in the darkness, and a candle flame was lit. The little stoic was involuntarily startled when she saw the newcomer. It's you? Chapter 4773. Fifth young Master Qin glanced down. He saw that the bowl of porridge he was holding had now shattered into several pieces, and pitifully fell to the ground. There was simply no way to salvage the situation. He couldn't resist lifting his head and glaring at Arbor in a huff. Why are you so violent, destroying and attacking people at the drop of a hat? Arbor glanced at him in surprise before casting a wary glance behind him. Why are you here? Who's outside? I am, my Qiao. Why are you still so unadorably vigilant? I'm just passing by. A frivolous voice was heard from outside the door. Arbor knew who the visitor was just by hearing that voice. His small face immediately put on his trademark expressionless face, and he didn't even bat an eyelid as he coldly said to the door, "Get in here." Eldest young Master Qin strode through the door, his handsome face beaming with amusement. Long time no see, my Qiao. The little stoic's hand was as quick as lightning, and she threw a handful of small nails at him without a second word. Eldest young Master Qin's handsome face that was like a spring breeze contorted slightly. He placed one hand on the door frame and forcefully flipped his body outside. A row of black nails as thick as a pinky finger was nailed into the door in a very consistent manner. A woman's shriek was subsequently heard, accompanied by hurried footsteps. The group of subordinates frantically called out, young master, young master." They scrambled to unsheath their swords from their waists, looking ready for battle. When did an assassin sneak onto the ship and attack their eldest young master viciously, without a second word? Eldest young Master Qin twitched his mouth and waved his hand helplessly. It's fine, it's fine. There's no assassin, there's nothing at all. Withdraw." Eldest young Master Qin pacified his nervous personal bodyguards. Withdraw? What do you mean it's fine? Arbor heard a woman's shrill shriek from outside the door. Eldest cousin, I told you not to save that person inside. She's so vicious, and doesn't know what's good for her. She doesn't have the slightest bit of gratitude, so what's the point of saving her? When Arbor heard the words eldest cousin, he couldn't help but roll his eyes at the sky. She had come. After parting on Xikong Star, his cousin Yang Fengyan, whom he hadn't seen for many years, had actually been brought to the 3 continents by the Qin estate. It was indeed easier to get things done when there were people in the residence. With Yang Fengyan's terrible talent and cultivation at that time, even if she died in this lifetime, it would be impossible for her to climb the heavenly stairway to the middle 6 prefectures, let alone wander around the 3 continents. So talent and whatnot could not be generalized. Many people who were hundreds of times more talented than Yang Fengyan could not obtain the qualifications to come to the upper realm, just because their family's influence was weak. I already said it's fine. What's the fuss about? The eldest young master's voice was tinged with impatience. Obviously, he was not in the mood to continue arguing with Yang Fengyan and the others. Miss Yang, you don't need to worry too much about our eldest young master. You just need to take care of yourself. A woman's indifferent voice sounded, covering Yang Fengyan's screams. You're just a little concubine by my cousin's side. How dare you talk to me like that? Do you believe that I won't slap you? All right. Eldest young Sir Qin pressed his aching temples. Everyone return. Yang Fengyan stomped her feet. Eldest cousin. No way, I'm worried about you. I have to stay and watch that little bitch inside to prevent her from making a move on you again. Qin Xian's expression instantly darkened. Chapter 4774. Yang Fengyan shrunk her neck and instantly realized that she had said the wrong thing. She pursed her lips and bashfully said in a small voice, I was also worried about cousin. Who do you think you can control with your mediocre martial arts skills? Eldest young Sir Qin didn't leave any face for his cousin at all, and mocked her without any trace of politeness. With your fancy moves, you won't even be able to withstand a single punch from the little stoic. The eldest young Sir said impatiently. If you don't want to die, then scram further away. Yang Fengyan stomped her feet indignantly. Her cultivation back then was just a bit higher than mine. Cousin, don't exaggerate, alright? Are you sure she's just a bit higher than you? Eldest young Sir Qin's handsome face frosted over as he glanced irritably at cousin Yang. He scoffed. All right, don't cause trouble here. Hurry and leave. If it weren't for his father's sake, would he warn this idiot in front of him? Who cared if she died or not? Qin Xian turned around and walked towards the room. He hadn't taken a few steps when he heard fifth brother stutter to the little stoic. You! How could you kill eldest brother? The little stoic said. I never need a reason to kill. Fifth brother continued to stutter. You're not someone who kills without batting an eyelid. Why would you describe yourself like that? The little stoic said. How would you know what kind of person I am? Fifth brother stopped stuttering and smoothly said. You're just not good at expressing yourself. Actually, you have a pretty good heart. Otherwise, you wouldn't have saved me back then. And you wouldn't have disdained me for being troublesome while taking care of me. You saw what seventh brother did to me, and even helped teach him a lesson. I know you're not that kind of bloodthirsty person. Qin Xian's footsteps paused, and he heard the little stoic scoff. That's because you don't understand me too well. Qin Xian. Why did he feel like these two people's conversation contained a bit of inexplicable humor? One stuttered while the other was as cold as a brick. Fifth brother, this child, had always disliked interacting with others, and he loathed interacting with women even more. He didn't expect that he would be able to say such a coherent sentence in front of the little stoic. You are an extremely good person, fifth young Master Qin said. Arbor, who had been labeled as a good person, silently raised his head and glanced at the fifth young master. He was too lazy to respond to him. What kind of good person was she? Don't think that she would let her guard down, just because they gave her the good person card to numb her. People from the Qin estate had appeared in the River of Forgetfulness, and had even coincidentally saved her? Things that were too coincidental inexplicably gave off the smell of conspiracy. Jojo, I'm coming in. Eldest young Sir Qin shouted from outside the door. Don't throw concealed weapons at me anymore. It was so scary just now. Arbor glanced up and saw eldest young Sir Qin stride in first, followed by Yang Fengyan, and a somewhat familiar-looking woman. When Yang Fengyan saw Arbor, her eyes blazed with hatred as if she was meeting an enemy. Her pair of beautiful eyes stared fixedly at her, and she bit her lip tightly without uttering a sound. Arbor glanced at them. Are you guys planning to put me under house arrest? Yang Fengyan was like a firecracker that ignited at the slightest spark, and she jumped up. Who put you under house arrest? My eldest cousin, and the others saved you out of the kindness of their hearts. So why aren't you the least bit grateful? Instead, you're acting so overbearing. Why are you in the sea of forgetfulness? Arbor glared sharply at Qin Xian. Chapter 4775. Eldest young Sir Qin smiled helplessly. Just as he was about to explain, he heard Yang Fengyan chirping. Woman, you're so unreasonable. Could it be that your family owns the Sea of Forgetfulness? If you can come, then we can't come? We the Qin estates people can't go anywhere. Yang Fengyan glanced at the little stoic complacently. Let alone the River of Forgetfulness. Even if it's the holy domain, we can go there if we want. Arbor threw her a severe gaze. You don't know the rules. I'm talking to your eldest young sir. Is it your place to interrupt? Slap yourself 10 times. Everyone. Yang Fengyan's face instantly turned red and green, as if it had been painted green. She was so angry that smoke seemed about to come out of her head. You don't go too far. Yang Fengyan had only spoken halfway when she saw the little stoic raise her hand. A terrifyingly huge force pushed in front of her. Yang Fengyan screamed and reflexively wanted to hide behind someone else. But how could the little stoic allow her to escape, since she was the one being targeted? A crisp slap landed on her face from a distance. Yang Fengyan fell headfirst out of the door in a very sorry state. Her head probably hit the ground, as it made a rather dull thud. Eldest young Sir Qin rolled his eyes helplessly. He already told her to stay outside and not follow in. But she refused to listen, and insisted on coming in to challenge the little stoic's bottom line. It was as if she was seeking death, burrowing in to take this slap. What else could he say? She truly forgot the pain after the wound healed. She was simply so stupid that he couldn't bear to look at her directly. She had completely forgotten how she had suffered at the little stoic's hands back then in the Qin estate, right? Perhaps Yang Fengyan was dazed from the fall, for she didn't make a sound for a long time. Arbor looked up at eldest young Sir Qin and asked suspiciously, Why did you appear here so coincidentally? I've been here for more than half a month. The eldest young sir rolled his eyes irritably and walked to her without consulting anyone. He raised his hand and rudely poked her head. Don't always suspect others. I don't have a trace of malice toward you. What are you doing in the Sea of Forgetfulness? If it was said to be sightseeing, then it would be too far away. Moreover, in this boundless Sea of Forgetfulness, there was no reason to stop. Eldest young Master Qin smiled at her. Our estate has received news that the largest pond lotus sacred realm, in the River of Forgetfulness, will open in half a month. Ahem. Eldest young master coughed in embarrassment. I'm definitely not the one who came here to scout. But I saw that I had nothing to do, so, Arbor looked at him with disdain, and the young master looked back at her innocently. You do have a lot of free time. Jojo. Eldest young Sir Qin threw her a coquettish glance with a grin. Tell me, how vigilant are you? No matter how I look at it, none of them look like good people. Arbor was silent for a long time. Suddenly he said expressionlessly, Why do you keep winking at me? I can see that your eyes are clear and spirited. You don't seem to have any symptoms of an eye disease. Do you want me to take your pulse? The 5 young masters were speechless. Eldest young sir huffed. Aya Jojo, I'm not playing with you anymore. You really are an unromantic blockhead. Arbor glanced at him expressionlessly. Then do you want to take my pulse? I'll take your pulse. Eldest young Sir Qin couldn't resist rolling his eyes. Chapter 4776. He silently ridiculed the little stoic in his mind. Not only is this stoic slow-witted, but she also can't see people. I wonder what's going on. Take him for example. Even if the Qin estate's eldest young sir, who was as beautiful as a flower, intentionally loitered in front of Sir Jojo all day long, the little stoic would definitely turn a blind eye to him. Want to eat? Sir Jojo's shout brought eldest young Sir Qin's wandering thoughts back. When he returned to his senses and met Arbor's pitch-black eyes, eldest young sir involuntarily chuckled. Okay, I'll instruct people to prepare it right away. You fainted from the divine stone cannon earlier, so you can't eat too much random food. How about I cook you a bowl of plain porridge? Just as 5th young sir finished speaking, he saw the little stoic turn around and shake her head at him. She said resolutely, Want to eat? 5th young sir couldn't help but want to laugh when he saw her determined expression. Arbor said expressionlessly, I want to eat red braised pork. 5th young sir originally wanted to tell her that this dish was too greasy, and that she was more suited to eat bland dishes. In the end, when he saw the little stoic's frozen expression, for some reason, the words that reached his mouth actually turned into okay. I'll go take a look in the kitchen. 5th young sir fled in defeat. Arbor was baffled, not understanding what was going on with 5th young Sir Qin. Seeing that 5th young sir also followed him out, the little stoic then raised her hand to check her pulse. She wanted to check her body's condition. Why was she so weak that she couldn't even touch meat? She also didn't know which quack had prescribed her a prescription while she was unconscious, saying that she was suited to eat bland food. She couldn't help but be taken aback when she checked her pulse. Unwilling to give up, the little stoic then checked her pulse 3 times in a row, before finally confirming one thing. Her pulse was smooth and round, like a bead on a plate. This was clearly a pregnancy pulse. Just by looking at her expression, it was absolutely impossible to tell that she was agitated. Who would have expected that her heart was surging abnormally right now? She simply didn't dare to believe her own pulse. The little stoic was still worried, and checked her pulse twice. When she lifted her head, there seemed to be a flickering luster flowing in her pair of watery eyes, and he couldn't discern the slightest hint of joy or anger. She, who had lived 2 lives, had become a mother for the first time? What kind of life experience was this? She didn't know, but if someone familiar with her was here, they would be able to tell that her breathing was erratic, and her heart was beating rapidly. It should be smooth and sleek, like a pearl moving on a plate. This was clearly the pulse of pregnancy. Just by looking at her expression, it was impossible to tell that she was emotional. Who would have thought that at this moment, her heart was surging with emotions? He couldn't believe his own pulse. The little stoic was still worried and checked her pulse twice. When she lifted her head, there seemed to be a flickering luster flowing in her pair of watery eyes, and he couldn't discern the slightest hint of joy or anger. She, who had lived 2 lives, had become a mother for the first time? What kind of life experience was this? She didn't know, but if someone familiar with her was here, they would be able to tell that her breathing was erratic, and her heart was beating rapidly. It should be smooth and sleek, like a pearl moving on a plate. This was clearly the pulse of pregnancy. Just by looking at her expression, it was absolutely impossible to tell that she was agitated. Who would have thought that her heart was surging abnormally right now? He simply didn't dare to believe his own pulse. The little stoic was still worried and checked her pulse twice. When she lifted her head, there seemed to be a flickering luster flowing in her pair of watery eyes, and he couldn't make out the slightest hint of joy or anger. She, who had lived 2 lives, had become a mother for the first time? What kind of life experience was this? She didn't know, but if someone familiar with her was here, they would be able to tell that her breathing was erratic and her heart was beating rapidly. Chapter 4777. He especially did not want to talk to this fellow beside him. This fellow would occasionally tell him, "My Jojo misses me. My Jojo misses me. My Jojo misses me." What is my Jojo doing now? So annoying, so long-winded. Only he had Jojo. Tui, how long have we been walking, Peach Blossom? Emolien was extremely bored and asked again, after walking for a short distance. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal was speechless. Why did he not want to talk to this fellow for some reason? It's been 2 days, Hichin replied expressionlessly. In the pitch-black darkness, Emolien did not notice Hichin's foul expression, and continued to say casually, "I wonder where that stinky human snake has run off to." In these 2 days, they could sense a trace of his aura from time to time. As they chased after him, they could always notice that the human snake's aura was faintly discernible and somewhat intermittent. That fellow was also a cunning fellow. Knowing that he was injured, he quickly found a place to escape. How could there be such a good thing? Taking advantage of someone's illness to take their life had always been their style. If they did not get rid of him now, when would they? Hichin kicked something round under his feet. It rolled on the ground covered with gravel and stones, making a gurgling sound. In such a dark and silent atmosphere, it seemed a little frightening. Emolien narrowed her eyes and looked over. She spread out her divine perception, and caught the object on the ground. It was a human skull. The 2 of them looked at each other in the dark, vigilance rising in their hearts. Could it be that there was still a ferocious beast hiding in the darkness ahead? The further they went, the more grotesquely shaped heads they saw. If they were not careful, they might even step on them. Hichin and Emolien looked at each other again, a trace of suspicion slipping through their hearts at the same time. Did that humanoid divine beast have such a big appetite? Other than human skulls, there were also many animal skeletons on the ground. Could it be that the humanoid divine beast had been silent underground for many years, and felt especially hungry once it was released. So it ate a sumptuous dinner? Such a ferocious thing must not be allowed to remain in this world. The two of them chased for a while before Seventh Yin suddenly came out of Emolien's sacred beast space and said with a serious expression, "Master, I can feel it." "Where?" "It's not far ahead." As soon as the Seventh Yin finished speaking, he took the lead and dashed toward the source of the aura. As they got closer, they saw that the human-shaped snake beast had its back facing them. Its snake tail was slowly slithering on the ground. Seventh Yin stopped in his tracks. He turned around and secretly said to his master, "Master, I'll go and ambush him. I'll buy you some time." Emolian was stunned. Just as she was about to ask Seventh Yin what time he was trying to buy for her, she saw him fly towards the back of the humanoid sacred beast without saying a word. He was so fast that Emolian didn't have time to stop him. Emolian could not help but tense up when she saw Seventh Yin jump onto the back of the humanoid sacred beast. They had all experienced the power of this matured holy beast. Seventh Yin, that little rascal, could not possibly be a match for the humanoid sacred beast, just as Emolian and Jichen's hearts were about to jump up. The humanoid sacred beast also turned around when it heard the sound of wind whistling from behind. However, when he turned around, he met Seventh Yan's big eyes and couldn't help but be stunned. Seventh Yan's fist was aimed at the back of the humanoid sacred beast. That fellow suddenly turned his head and looked at the two of them. "You, what are you doing?" Chapter 4778. What was surprising was that the moment the holy beast spoke, it cautiously took 2 steps back. That defensive little expression on her face made people feel a little annoyed. They were the ones who should be on guard. What was the meaning of this mature sacred beast's defensive expression? Seventh Yan's fist froze in midair. He put it down and glanced at him. You're awake?" His words seemed to have touched the sacred beast's reverse scale. He jumped up and shouted, "I've always been awake. When have I not been awake?" Seventh Yin chuckled and said rudely, 2 days ago, when you went crazy in the river of forgetfulness, you were already not awake. That's because someone did something evil to me." The snake man's eyes were red with anger. He muttered, "I've guarded the river of forgetfulness for the dragon clan for so many years. In the end, they locked me up in the abyss of the sacrificial sea. When I get there, I'll skin everyone in the Wangchuan dragon clan alive." "Oh, why would the dragon clan lock you up in the abyss of the sacrificial sea?" Seventh Yin asked curiously. Yuan Shurchen replied calmly, "Isn't that obvious? Of course, it's because he went berserk. The dragon clan had no choice but to lock him up. Otherwise, if such a powerful sacred beast had stayed in the clan, the dragon clan would have been famous in the 3 continents decades ago." The humanoid sacred beast's face turned green and white. He turned and shouted at Yuan Shurchen, "What the hell do you know? I went berserk because I had no choice." Unlike this time, he had been driven mad by someone with ulterior motives, causing him to lose his mind and become a knife in someone else's hand. Emolian said expressionlessly, "Since you've been in the abyss of the sacrificial sea for so long, you should be very familiar with the surroundings. Where is this place? Is there another path in front?" The humanoid sacred beast rolled his eyes at him. "I've been sleeping in the abyss of the sacrificial sea for many years. I was woken up a few days ago. What do you think I know?" Yuan Shurchen and Emolian looked at him with disdain. "What's the use of having you? You didn't even know how to use it, let alone its other effects." The two of them exchanged a few words with him and realized that the holy beast's mind had indeed cleared up. Now, in that pair of faint glazed eyes, other than a hint of alienation and indifference, there was also a trace of confusion. Their gazes fell on his hand, and only then did they realize that this fellow was holding a beast's bone in his hand. He actually looked at them with a somewhat comical expression. Ma Shurchen immediately pulled Emolien's sleeve warily. The latter hurriedly moved closer to him and stared at the holy beast warily. Seventh Yin snatched the beast's bone from his hand. "What are you trying to do? I'm warning you. Don't think you can beat us just because you're clear-headed." The humanoid sacred beast was very angry. He raised his hand to snatch the beast's bone from Seventh Yan's hand. "How dare you? How dare you snatch my food?" Emolian, and He-chan held their breaths and waited. They were about to help 7th Yin beat up the human snake, when they suddenly heard the creature's cry. For a moment, they thought they were hallucinating. Something didn't feel right. Shouldn't the humanoid sacred beast rush up and fight with 7th Yin in a fit of rage? Why did he say something so strange? An idea occurred to He-chan. He glanced at the beast's bone and poked Emolien's arm. Don't tell me this fellow wants to roast some meat? Chapter 4779. While Yin Qi was in a daze, the divine beast snatched the holy beast from Yin Qi's hand. The humanoid sacred beast snatched the bone from Yin Qi's hand and glared at Yin Qi angrily. If you want to eat it, go find it yourself. There are many more over there. Yin Qi strange. Why did he feel like the mature super holy beast in front of him had walked down from a pedestal? Why did he feel like his image was disillusioned? He was as strong as he was when he wasn't calm before. But now, he was as Chinibu as he was. He-chan hurried forward and asked tentatively, do you want me to roast it for you? The humanoid holy beast's eyes lit up slightly. He pretended to ponder for a while, glanced at Shi-chan, and nodded his head reluctantly. Since you want to show your filial piety so much, this old man will give you a chance. He-chan, how could he beat this old thing to death? How's your cooking? The humanoid holy beast asked seriously. It's okay, He-chan replied weakly. Jojo also praised my cooking skills before. The humanoid holy beast's eyes lit up. Then he asked with a straight face. Jojo is that wretched girl holding the ancient holy sword, right? Why is she so hot-tempered? She slashed me with her sword without any explanation. She was crazy. Didn't she know that super holy beasts like him were hard to find in this world? How could there not be more? How could she bear to kill such a precious holy beast? She was a wretched girl who didn't care about her life. He-chan blinked. How should I address you? You juniors can just call me Senior Lanshan. Emolien. This guy was taking advantage of her. Why did she feel so irritated? Zhuo Lanshan glanced at He-chan. Seeing that he had borrowed some fire from the kid beside him, and was roasting the holy beast's bone, as if he was roasting it, Zhuo Lanshan instantly felt happy. Why are we here? Emolien couldn't help but roll her eyes. If not for the fact that she couldn't beat this guy, she really wanted to punch and kick him. You still have the nerve to ask. It's all your fault that we're here. Just now, I spread out my divine sense and looked ahead. I found that this place is vast and deep, and I can't see the end of it. Zhuo Lanshan coiled up his snake tail and sat down on the ground. This old man has decided to rest here for a while and eat something before continuing. Emolien looked at him expressionlessly. Look again. See if you can sense any signs of life in front. What do you mean? Zhuo Lanshan asked in confusion. Yuan Shurchen couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. What he meant was for you to spread out your divine sense and take a look. Are there any holy beasts stronger than you nearby? How many saint beasts do you think there are in this world? As Zhuo Lanshan spoke, he raised his chin proudly. A saint beast stronger than me has yet to be born. Even 7th Yen, who was standing behind him, could not help but roll his eyes at the snake man. What's wrong with this beast? When he didn't speak and just fought, he felt quite cold. His expression was indifferent and cold, and his moves were quite ruthless. The defense of his copper skin and iron bones was also very shocking. Basically, he was indeed in an invincible state. But even so, who would praise himself so immodestly? There are so many corpses piled up nearby. Something powerful must have passed by here. It could be a human or a beast. It could be neither human nor beast. Only then did Zhuo Lanshan have a look of realization. Chapter 4780. Oh, that's fine too. After this old man is full, this old man will use my divine perception to check if there are any dangers in the surroundings. After a few words, Zhuo Lanshan's gaze was completely attracted by the fragrant roasted beast bones in He-shurchen's hands. There was a large piece of meat wrapped around the beast's bones, and it was indeed enough for a normal person to eat. But this was a mature sacred beast, so how could such a small piece of meat be enough to fill the gaps between his teeth? Hence, He-shurchen roasted 11 pieces of beast bones consecutively for this fellow, before he was finally full. After eating his fill, Swalanshan looked very happy. All right, let this old man take a look. His voice suddenly paused, and his ears twitched. Seems like something is approaching. I wonder if husband has any food to eat. Sir Jojo muttered to himself as he held a piece of red braised pork in his hand. Husband and rotten peach blossom fell into that pit. So I wonder what the situation is now. No matter what, I still have to wait at the entrance of the sacrificial sea's abyss. Perhaps I can wait for Jojo's lotus and rotten peach blossom there? Is the food not to your liking? The fifth young master's gentle voice sounded in her ears. Arbor returned to his senses and expressionlessly glanced at fifth young master Qin. He shook his head and set down his bowl and chopsticks in passing. I'm full. You didn't eat much. And it's enough. It was fine as long as there was enough nutrition. From now on, she had to take better care of her body and protect herself and the baby. I wonder what the baby looks like. It wouldn't be good if it looked like her and had a paralyzed face. It was better to look like Lotus. When Jojo's lotus casually smiled at others, it really looked like a mountain flower in full bloom. No good, no good. That wasn't good either. It was too ostentatious. Jojo's lotus couldn't casually smile at others. Forget it, there was no need to think so much. The top priority was to leave this place first. Although eldest Qin saved her, she just wasn't willing to have anything to do with the Qin estate's people. Forget it, forget it. He saved her, so she had to express her gratitude. After a while, she would go to the storage talisman to take a look. If there were any pills suitable for fifth Qin, she would just gift them to him on the other end. Xiaomu's thoughts were hazy, and her thoughts were in a mess. On the other side, fifth young master Qin called out to her weakly several times, but he didn't receive any response. She couldn't help but look at her curiously. Miss Qiao, Joe. Arbor suddenly came back to his senses and looked at him. Oh, it's nothing. It wasn't very polite for her to completely let her mind wander when other people were talking to her. Xiaomu nodded at the fifth young master before asking absent-mindedly, Have you been feeling better recently? Yes, much better. When eldest young Sir Qin walked in, he heard the fifth young Sir stuttering as he conversed with the little stoic. Jojo, we've gathered first-hand information on Forget Chuan. Do you want to hear it? Arbor raised a brow. Could it be that the huge explosion on the surface of the sea earlier was because something happened to the Forget Chuan Dragon Clan's land? Did someone assemble mini divine stone cannons to attack the Forget Chuan clan's land? But didn't Long Huan and Long Shangyun already leave the Forget Chuan clan's land? Why were these people attacking Forget Chuan again? It was the demonic cult's cult master, Ding Yun, who gathered people and launched an all-out attack on the Forget Chuan clan's land. Eldest young Sir Qin smiled at her. It's really lively. Arbor couldn't help but be startled. How's Forget Chuan? Chapter 4781. We received news that the demonic sect's young master Ding not only led people to surround the Wangchuan clan, but also captured Long Chuyu and his wife. In addition, he also sent people to deal with Long Jiang and Long Shangyun. Arbor was taken aback when she heard this. Her fingers tightened slightly as she asked expressionlessly, Why did he capture Long Jiang and Long Shangyun? Eldest young master shook his head with a smile. Not capture, kill. Arbor's eyes widened abruptly. After a long pause, she said, What other news did you receive? Spit it all out at once. Who exactly did this fellow learn this habit of speaking half and leaving half unsaid? Eldest young Master Qin couldn't help but be amused when he saw her serious expression. This fellow simply dragged a stool over and sat down beside her. Crossing his long legs, he smiled at her and said, Hey, how did you know that I know more than this? Arbor glanced at him expressionlessly, too lazy to talk to him. Was there even a need to think about it? Although eldest Qin, this fellow, had a mischievous and unreliable appearance on the surface, he was still extremely meticulous in his work. Since he sent people to keep an eye on the Wangchuan Dragon clan, he must be paying attention to every detail, big or small. Okay. I'll tell you everything. Eldest young Master Qin nodded and said with a smile, The news I received is that during the encirclement, Long Jiang perished, and Long Shangyun was smashed into the Sea of Wangchuan by the ship's fragments. She hasn't been found yet. Arbor reflexively clenched 2 fingers. Qin Xian lowered his head to look at her small hands and said with a sigh, "Jojo, you still care about them very much. I've already sent people to search for Long Shangyun. Don't worry, as long as she's still breathing, the people I sent to search for her will be able to save her." He knew that this little fellow was a stubborn and soft-hearted little fellow. That was why he had sent people to search for that girl Long Shangyun earlier. However, the Sea of Wangchuan was extremely large. If Long Shangyun transformed into a mermaid and hid in some underwater cave, it wouldn't be easy to find her. Ding Yun's people are also searching for her now. It seems that he wants to see her alive or dead. Eldest young Sir Qin sighed and said, "Your uncle and aunt probably won't have a good ending in his hands." Arbor was silent for a moment before he nodded indifferently. Long Qiyu was Ding Yun's biological father. As his son, he did not feel sorry for his father, so it was even more impossible for her, his nominal niece, to meddle in other people's business. Lord Jojo didn't want to get involved in the trivial matters of the Forgotten River Dragon clan. It was just that Long Shangyun was a little too innocent after all. "Don't worry, Jojo. I've already sent many people to look for her. I'll be able to rescue Miss Long before Ding Yun does," Zither young master said with a smile. Arbor glanced at him and said coldly, "I'm not worried about her." Eldest young Sir Qin stood up with a smile. All right. You're not worried about her. Who can you fool with that look in your eyes?" He was obviously very worried about Long Shangyun, but he liked to pretend that he didn't care. The eldest young master smiled and shook his head. "Jojo rests well. I'll come and see you later." Arbor really wanted to shout at him, "Don't come and find me if there's nothing." But he heard this zither young master say with a chuckle, "I'll bring you the latest news of the Forgotten River Dragon clan when the time comes." Hence, Xiaomu didn't say anything. Forgotten River Dragon clan water prison Sikong Fuling put down the demonic flute in her hands and looked smilingly at the girl, who was tied to the iron pillar with her head drooping. Chapter 4782. This woman had been hanging from the iron pillar in this position for more than 6 to 10 hours. She had been in this half-dead state the entire time. Sikong Fuling reached out and snapped her fingers. Immediately, the jingling sound of pendants could be heard. 2 beautiful women with half of their jade arms exposed and dressed in colorful silk walked in while dragging a wooden barrel. They bowed to Sikong Fuling. "Saintess." Sikong Fuling nodded and looked at the drooping woman with a faint sneer in her eyes. "Madam Long, you're quite stubborn. Come, move the people in." Madam Long abruptly raised her head and stared fixedly at Sikong Fuling with bloodshot eyes, as though she wanted to swallow her whole. Her eyes were filled with a cold fury and venomous light as she stared fixedly at Sikong Fuling and didn't move away for a long while. Sikong Fuling didn't take it to heart as she smiled and waved her small hand. "Hurry up. I have excellent news to tell Madam Long in a while." The 2 beautiful women walked up with graceful expressions and unlocked the iron chains on Madam Long's body. They pulled her down from the iron pillar and dragged her to the large wooden barrel. As soon as the wooden barrel's lid was opened, a layer of chill rushed over. Madam Long shuddered unexpectedly as she looked up at Sikong Fuling with a look of disbelief. What are you doing?" Madam Long's voice was filled with uncontrollable fear and despair. I want to see Chuyu. I want to see Ding Yan's father. I think Madam Long still hasn't figured out what your current status is." Sikong Fuling smiled at her. That smile was so cold and terrifying that Madam Long couldn't help but shudder violently. "Do you understand that you're a prisoner now? A prisoner of my demonic sect?" Sikong Fuling smiled coldly at her. "You don't have the right to ask for this and that, Madam Long." Madam Long shuddered all over. Don't be fooled by the 2 maidservants who were holding her up because they were very strong. It didn't take much effort for them to drag her to the wooden barrel. Mrs. Long shook her head again and again. Her cultivation was low to begin with, and now that Ding Yun had sealed the last bit of spirit energy in her body, she was like an ordinary person who was at the mercy of others. She couldn't resist at all. The 2 maids dragged Madam Long and roughly lifted her up, throwing her into the bucket. 2 pairs of hands pressed down on her shoulders, forcing her to sink deeper into the bucket. Her legs sank into a pile of bone-chilling ice. How does it feel, Madame Long? Sikong Fuling smiled faintly at her. Let you stay in this bone-piercing ice spirit for 2 hours. Oh no, it will only take about 1 incense stick's worth of time. Take a guess, will your legs still be able to walk? Madame Long's pupils constricted as she screamed. I want to see Ding Yun. Let me go. You dare to treat me like this? I want to see Ding Yun. I want to see Ding Yun. Sikong Fuling smiled at her and picked up a fist-sized ice spirit. She crushed it into powder and threw it at Madame Long's face. Madame Long instantly shuddered as that iciness drilled into her neck. Madame Long, your son Long Jing is dead. Madame Long widened her eyes in disbelief and repeatedly shook her head as she shouted sternly, Impossible. My Jing went to the forgotten river Cold Valley. He can't clap. Sikong Fuling clapped her hands twice and chuckled as she instructed the guards who walked in. Chapter 4783. Madame Long doesn't believe that the young master of the Wangchuan Dragon clan is dead. Bring him in and let Madame Long take a look. As soon as she finished speaking, those guards immediately moved Long Huan's corpse in and threw it in front of Madame Long's wooden barrel. The corpse had already been blasted into bits and pieces by the god's stone cannon, but half of his face was still intact. It was indeed her Huaner. Madame Long's eyes widened as she cried out in pain. My son! Her vision turned black, and she fainted. Sikong Fuling shrugged and threw a look at the 2 maidservants beside her. The 2 gorgeous maidservants grabbed Madame Long's hair and slapped her face twice. Madame Long slowly woke up, only to hear a cold voice ringing in her ears. Madam, if you don't want your son to be unable to rest in peace after death, then you have to cooperate with me, right? What do you mean? Sikong Fuling reached out to take a small bottle of green medicinal liquid from the guard and looked at Madame Long with feigned surprise. You don't know? Tianyin has a medicinal liquid that can revive a dead person after drinking it. It's just that the appearance of a walking corpse might not be that beautiful. Madame Long shuddered as she stared at Sikong Fuling in disbelief. My son is already dead, but Ding Yun, that heartless and unscrupulous person, still won't let him off? Sikong Fuling's eyes turned cold. You can finally question me now. Then, when you harmed my big brother, who could he complain to about the pain and suffering he went through? Look at you. Who are you putting on that righteous face for? My eldest brother was only an infant back then, but he was killed by you. Don't you know how much suffering and exhaustion he has suffered all these years? I'm just here to settle this score with you. Shouldn't I? Madame Long couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Sikong Fuling impatiently interrupted, her eyes filled with cold fury. If you don't obediently tell me the antidote for the love-severing poison, even if your son Long Qian is dead, I can still bring him back to life and order him to be a slave or servant. Be careful, holy maiden. This woman is accumulating power to self-destruct. The 2 guards had sharp eyes and immediately saw that the wooden barrel had swelled and deformed. They hurriedly shouted. Sikong Fuling hastily took a few steps back. She had only taken a few steps out of the water prison when she heard a loud, dull sound coming from the water prison. When Madame Long self-destructed, Sikong Fuling only heard that woman shriek, Since I can't protect my son, then I will die with him. Sikong Fuling could not help feeling anxious. It didn't matter if that woman died, but she had to leave the antidote for the love-severing poison before she died. Madame Long's angry voice came from the air. Ding Yun, the love-severing poison in your body can't be cured. You are destined to be alone for the rest of your life. You can't fall in love with anyone. Otherwise you will die a horrible death. Ha 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 ha. The madam finally ended the farce with a series of crazy laughter. When the tremors subsided a little, Sikong Fuling hurriedly rushed into the water prison again, only to see that the prison was littered with rubble and Madame Long and Long Huan were nowhere to be seen. The 2 of them had been at the center of the explosion, and with Madame Long's explosion, they should have disappeared. Only a small pile of bone fragments was left on the ground, with smoke and dust billowing in the middle. Sikong Fuling's expression changed and she held her breath. Her bright eyes emitted 2 cold glints as she clenched her fists tightly and growled. They got off too easy. Chapter 4784. Arbor liked to check her pulse now that she was free, and she checked her pulse more than 3 times a day. Later on, she felt that she was truly too nervous, which was detrimental to her mother and fetus's physical and mental health. So she simply took out a medical book and calmed her mind while reading. It was late yesterday, so eldest Qin didn't come over to disturb her again. She slept quite well last night and casually ate some plain porridge and side dishes. It was almost noon now, but Arbor still didn't see any trace of eldest young Sir Qin, so she couldn't help but be curious. Could it be that some unforeseen event happened at the River of Forgetfulness? Although Arbor said she wasn't worried, she was still worried about Long Shangyun's safety. This little lady was even younger than her, and her family's circumstances had suddenly changed, so she didn't know where she had drifted off to. It's fine if I bring the things in. You may withdraw. An arrogant voice came from outside the door. Miss Yang. The 2 maidservants' delicate voices rang out one after the other. The young sir has ordered that no one is allowed to casually disturb the honored guest inside. Yang Fengyan glared and stomped her leg. What, you dare to disobey me? Don't forget, I'm the Qin estate's cousin, miss. Be careful, or you'll have to bear the consequences. The 2 maidservants looked at each other in dismay, simultaneously thunderstruck by this cousin miss. How should they put it? This cousin miss was indeed their Qin estate's cousin miss, but her relationship with the Qin estate's main family was very distant. She was only a woman from a branch family in the Lower Star Domain. If the young sir hadn't stayed in the Lower Star Domain all this time, how could he have gotten involved with this country bumpkin woman? One of the maidservants pursed her lips and secretly winked at the other maidservant, hinting for her to look at Yang Fengyan's arrogant face. It was truly laughable. She was merely a woman from a branch family. She was lucky enough to get involved with a young sir, and thought she was someone important. After being brought to the main family, she didn't lead a good life. Every day, she would throw, hit, and drink at them, the servants. Just looking at her was detestable. Move aside. Yang Fengyan went up and pushed that maidservant, directly squeezing between the 2 of them. She even snatched the tray from a maidservant's hands and walked in with a plate of food. She heavily threw the food on the table in front of the little stoic. Clang, 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 clang. A series of sounds rang out. The originally perfectly covered bowls were all thrown askew by her, and the soup inside spilled out. Tell me, what will it take for you to scram from our Qin estate's boat? How much do you want before you leave? Yang Fengyan crossed her legs and sat down in front of Arbor. She took out a soul coin card and slapped it in front of Arbor. She looked at her coldly and said, Don't you love money as much as your life? Here are 5 million spirit coins. Take them. Take them away. Take them all away. Arbor's expression turned gloomy when he saw the soup spill out. At this moment, he saw Yang Fengyan throw a spirit coin card in front of him. He stretched out his hand and put the spirit coin card in his pocket. He stood up and punched Yang Fengyan's big face. The 2 maidservants were speechless. Why did it feel like this stoic-faced little lady didn't play by the rules? He felt that he had been insulted. He could have just treated Miss Biao. But why did he really put that spirit coin card in his pocket? He took someone else's money and punched them in the face without a second word. What kind of trick was this? Arbor wasn't satisfied with one punch. He directly flew up and grabbed Yang Fengyan's braid, flipping her and her stool to the ground. Chapter 4785. Yang Fengyan rolled to the ground in pain. Her eyes had barely widened when Arbor stomped on her chest and crushed her forcefully. Yang Fengyan felt like her sternum was about to be crushed by that savage fellow. Her back was embedded in the rectangular chair, and she felt excruciatingly painful everywhere. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Xiaomu trampled Yang Fengyan under her foot as she stared at her in confusion. Did this girl's head get smashed? Why did it feel like she was even more stupid than when she was on Seekong planet? Her soul couldn't have been taken over by someone, right? Arbor was paranoid and had a belly full of conspiracy theories, as he carefully sized up the woman lying on her back on the ground. Upon closer inspection, he could still see the faint scar on her cheek, which was still half a color difference from the surrounding skin. Sir Jojo had already whipped her in Seekong planet's Qin estate, so why didn't she learn her lesson? This Yang Fengyan was truly the classic example of forgetting the pain after the wound healed. She clearly knew Sir Jojo's temperament for insulting people, yet she still came to provoke him. If she had the ability to provoke Arbor, then so be it. The main issue was that she couldn't beat him in a fight, nor could she rebuke him. She always came in high spirits only to return in disappointment. Didn't she find it boring? Arbor, you let go, let go, let go. Ow. Yang Fengyan felt like her sternum was about to cave in from that stoic face. Her charming little face couldn't help but turn green, and her entire body trembled in anger. Xiao Arbor, ah. You stepped on me. Ah. Arbor looked at her with an indescribable expression, and he exerted more strength in his foot. Yang Fengyan's breathing stopped, and she almost couldn't catch her breath, and completely fainted. When Fifth Young Master Qin heard the news and came over, he saw this scene. Fifth Young Master wordlessly rushed over and said weakly, "Xiao, Miss Xiao, could you first let go of Miss Yang so we can talk?" Arbor turned to glance at Fifth Young Master. She was the one who ran over to be beaten. Fifth Young Master, why do I have nothing to say? Big Brother had brought people out to search for Long Shangyun, and had yet to return. Why did he have to deal with such a matter? Miss Qiao. Fifth Young Master braced himself and said, Let's not, don't be agitated. Release Miss Yang first. If Miss Yang is in the wrong, then we'll make her apologize to you. When the little stoic heard the words, don't get agitated, she thought that was right and hastily retracted her foot, secretly vexed. She was now the mother of a child. She should be more mature and steady. How could she get angry with Yang Fengyan, this retard? It was simply too impulsive. Arbor glanced at the Fifth Young Master, coughed lightly and retracted his foot. All right, take her out. Don't show her to me before I leave the ship. She's very annoying to look at. Fifth Young Master's mouth twitched. He nodded and turned to look at Yang Fengyan. Why aren't you helping Miss Yang up? The man's face was cold as he shouted at the two maids who were watching the show. The two maids hastily rushed forward and pulled up Yang Fengyan, who was moaning incessantly from the ground. It would have been fine if she hadn't moved, but the moment she moved, Yang Fengyan felt like all the bones in her body were falling apart. She felt uncomfortable everywhere, and it hurt so much that her eyebrows twitched. Arbor! Yang Fengyan shrieked. Before she could start cursing, she heard Fifth Young Master interject indifferently. Why aren't you helping Miss Yang back to her room to rest? Chapter 4786. The two servant girls looked at each other, and hurriedly reached out to support Yang Fengyan, intending to drag her out. However, Yang Fengyan was unwilling. She struggled hard, but failed to break free from the two servant girls' arms. She stared at Fifth Young Master with eyes full of grievance and hatred. Fifth brother, you have to stand up for me. Where's eldest cousin? I want to see eldest cousin. This Xiao Mu is simply going too far. Look at how she slapped my face. Just now, she stepped on my chest as if she wanted to break my bones. Arbor looked at her in confusion. Before this woman could continue to complain, he couldn't help but interrupt. Didn't you want me to step on you? This strange woman not only had a bad brain, but her memory was even worse. When did I say such a thing? Yang Fengyan's pretty face twisted in anger. Not only do you like to be rough and violent, you even lie through your teeth and accuse me wrongly. Arbor looked at her expressionlessly. Just now, you were lying on the ground, and kept saying step on me, step on me, step on me to me. You're not old, but your memory is already bad. Indeed, you're getting more and more stupid as you age. Fifth Young Master's lips twitched, and he continued to be speechless. Yang Fengyan, who was supported by the two servant girls, was so angry that she looked like she was about to fall to the ground and vomit blood. She found that talking to Arbor was simply too infuriating. She wanted to turn into a wisp of smoke and fly into the sky. Did I ask you to step on me? I was just asking a question, all right? I mean you dare to step on me. When Arbor heard this, he looked at Yang Fengyan with an increasingly strange gaze. What a load of nonsense. I've already stepped on you, and you're still asking me if I dare? If it weren't for her baby, she would have given him another kick to prove whether she dared or not. Calm down, calm down. She was the mother of the baby. She couldn't be so impulsive in the future. She had to think about the baby, Yes, think about it more. She was someone with a baby. Arbor took 2 deep breaths to calm himself down. He stretched out his hand and spread his fingers. His face was expressionless as he said, "Forget it. I don't want to argue with you. Besides, you're just a patient. I can't be too calculative with you." Yang Fengyan was so angry that her face contorted several times. Her intuition told her that if she questioned the little stoic about her illness, she would definitely receive a very irritating answer. Arbor turned to look at fifth young master and shouted without hesitation, "Hurry up and take her back. I don't want to see her in front of me for the next few days." Yang Fengyan turned around and called out pitifully, "Fifth brother." 2 drops of tears rolled down his cheeks. "Fifth brother, you just watched as I was humiliated like this." Yang Fengyan said with an aggrieved expression, "I want to find eldest cousin and ask him to give me justice." Fifth young Sir Qin's face darkened impatiently. "Why are you so nosy? If you're waiting for eldest brother, then wait on the deck. What did you come here for?" She clearly knew that this stoic wasn't someone to be trifled with, yet she still insisted on coming here to humiliate herself. If this wasn't stupidity, then what was? Yang Fengyan stomped her foot hatefully. She pointed at Arbor and shrieked, "She stole my 5 million spirit coin card." Arbor shook his head. "I didn't steal it." Then with a serious face he continued, "You're the one who delivered yourself to me." Chapter 4787. Fifth young Master Qin looked coldly at Yang Fengyan. "I will inform eldest brother of everything you did today, no matter how big or small. If you dare to cause trouble again, I will send people to deport you back to the Sikong planet branch family." The fifth young master said icily, "Think it over." Yang Fengyan's eyes bulged in shock, simply not daring to believe her own ears. Fifth brother actually said he was going to deport her back to the lower star domain? On what basis? Yang Fengyan glared hatefully at Arbor with her beautiful eyes before turning around and dashing out in a fit of anger and impatience. Fifth young Master Qin turned around and said to the little stoic, "Miss Qiao, you can stay here at ease. I will send people to supervise Miss Yang and prevent her from coming near and bothering you again." The little stoic naturally wasn't too reassured. Once she had the chance, she naturally had to stay as far away from the Qin estate as possible. At noon, Qin Xian, who had finished patrolling the sea, returned to the ship with a merman riddled with wounds. He brought the merman in front of Arbor. Arbor frowned and stared at him for a while. He vaguely remembered that this person seemed to be called Jiang Song, one of Long Qian's personal guards. The reason why the little stoic remembered a minor character like Jiang Song was that her memory was a bit deep last time, when they were playing horse games with Long Qian and Long Shangyun on the ship. This personal guard named Jiang Song was forced to fill in the spot because they were missing a member. In the end, he lost until he cried for his parents and nearly fainted completely due to chest tightness and dizziness. Jiang Song, this royal guard, gave her a bit of a deep impression. No wonder she could recognize this guy at a glance. When Jiang Song saw Arbor, it was as if he had seen a relative he hadn't seen in 800 years. He threw himself at him while bawling, wiping his tears as he shouted, Crown Princess, hurry and send people to save our miss." "Where is your miss?" "Miss fell into the sea of forgetfulness, so I lost track of her." "Arbor, you've been following Long Shangyun all this time, but now you've lost track of her. She's not a living immortal who knows how to calculate. Naturally, she wouldn't know where Long Shangyun went. Furthermore, the river of forgetfulness was so big. If she were to go there alone, it would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. Unless she stepped on some dog shit luck, it would be impossible to find Long Shangyun in a short period of time." Arbor raised his head and met the young master's smiling eyes. "Oh, I went out to sea today and only found this delirious kid nearby. Jojo, just ignore him. Look at him. His words are all jumbled up and illogical. I don't know if his head was injured in the explosion. Men, send him down to rest. Crown Princess, you must help our miss, Crown Princess. Arbor looked at Jiang Song's back thoughtfully. "Yang Fengyan came to find trouble with you today?" The young master walked closer and sat down at the table with a chuckle. pointing at the seat opposite him. Arbor looked at him expressionlessly and asked instead of answering, "Is this ship returning to Dragon Flame City?" I told Jojo earlier. We planned to go to the Pool Lotus Sacred Land to take a look. So this ship wasn't heading to Dragon Flame City in the Divine Continent. As they sailed, they would only get further and further away from the Imperial capital. Arbor looked at the young master thoughtfully and asked tentatively, "What if I want to leave?" Eldest young master Qin sighed and said helplessly to her, "Jojo, I'm not putting you under house arrest. Wherever you want to go, just go." Chapter 4788. It's just that you're pregnant now, so it's inconvenient for you to move around. If possible, why don't you recuperate for a while? When you're healthy, you can go wherever you want. We definitely won't stop you. Upon hearing this, Xiaomu raised her elegant brows. You know, eldest Qin smiled helplessly. I found several physicians to check on your condition. How could I not know? Seeing that he answered fairly sincerely, Xiaomu nodded her small head. She pretended to be nonchalant and asked, "Did you leak the news to Qin Xian that I'm here?" Eldest young Sir Qin shook his head. "I didn't say anything." For some reason, Arbor actually heaved a sigh of relief. She really didn't want to see Omega Kotoku in this unfavorable situation. Even if she did, she would feel like she had nothing to say. She was even more unwilling to be entangled with this person. Everything could wait until her divine perception recovered. She would bide her time for now. He spread out his divine perception on Zhuolan Mountain and returned empty-handed after a round. He turned to shake his head at Emolian and Ma Shurchen. "In my humble opinion, you two must be overthinking." It wasn't like he hadn't stayed in the abyss of the sacrificial sea before. How many years had he stayed in this place? How could he not know if there was anything strange in the abyss of the sacrificial sea? The two youngsters were overthinking, because it was their first time in the abyss of the sacrificial sea, and they were unaccustomed and fearful. Once they were used to it, they could stay anywhere they wanted. Emolian glanced at the human snake. After a moment of silence, she suddenly asked, "Since you were able to escape the abyss of the sacrificial sea once, can you do it a second and third time?" "You're thinking too much," the human snake said expressionlessly. "I was able to leave successfully last time because someone summoned me. Besides, the abyss of the sacrificial sea is a deep pressure. It's impossible for it to let people like us go. Once you fall into the abyss of the sacrificial sea, you can forget about walking out alive." The human snake's head drooped. To be honest, he already couldn't remember how many seasons he had stayed in this dark place, where he couldn't even see his fingers. If he had to recall well, most of the time, he seemed to be hibernating. He didn't open his eyes much and couldn't sense the changes in the outside world. "We won't be able to crawl out," the snake man said dejectedly. This fellow had probably tried to climb up from here more than once, and each time he had failed. Emolian and Yuan Shichen saw his gloomy expression and couldn't help but glance at him. "This path is blocked, but it doesn't mean that other paths are blocked as well." Emolian walked forward for a while, then suddenly stopped and asked, "Is there an underground water source nearby?" The snake man listened attentively, frowned, and thought for a moment. Then he nodded and said, "Probably. Don't look at me like that. Even though I was imprisoned in the sacrificial sea abyss, as you can see, the underground abyss is well connected. At that time, I had no idea where I was being held. Then how did you come out after you were summoned?" Emolian was keenly aware of this problem. The human snake man was stunned for a moment. Then he said, "I thought I saw a light floating in front of me. It was like a guiding light, guiding me all the way." Emolian muttered to herself, "Was this really Long Qian's summoning?" Yuan Shichen frowned. "The sound of the water is getting louder. Let's go and take a look. Could it be that there's another gathering place deep underground?" Chapter 4789. The human snake from MT Zhuolan was at the very front. He moved very quickly, although he did not retract his tail, and his body looked very large. He was very agile, and made no sound when he swam. Emolian and Hu Shurchen followed behind him. They walked for about 10 minutes in the pitch-black darkness. Suddenly, a very thin ray of light appeared in front of them. It was like a glimmer of light seeping through a crack in the stone wall. Hu Shurchen and Emolien looked at each other and hurriedly quickened their pace. That human snake had already slithered ahead. He swam rapidly in front of them for a few minutes like an arrow released from a bow. He suddenly stopped. Emolien and Hu Shurchen, who were following closely behind him, did not expect this guy to suddenly stop. They almost stepped on his tail. Hu Shurchen slapped him in annoyance and growled in a low voice. "What are you doing?" The human snake hurriedly waved at them. "Come here quickly." For some reason, Hu Shurchen felt that this stinky snake was a little funny. When this stinky snake went berserk, his combat strength was amazing. Who would have thought that after he returned to normal, he would be so stupid? The contrast between before and after was so great that Hu Shurchen sometimes could not react. The two of them followed and floated behind the human snake to stand still. Looking forward from their angle, they happened to see a strange sight. There was a huge sinkhole in front of them. Dozens of men and women in strange clothes were worshipping the sinkhole devoutly. They kowtowed again and again, their heads hitting the ground. Every time they knocked their heads, there would be a dong-dong sound. It was obvious that they used a lot of force. The three of them looked at each other in shock. Emolien lowered her voice and said, "Didn't you say that you've lived here for hundreds of years? Have you never seen these people before?" The human snake looked confused. "No, I haven't. I don't think I've been here before. And I've never seen such a huge sinkhole." Hu Shurchen could not help but twitch the corner of her mouth. "I suspect that this human snake did not fall to the bottom at the beginning." "What do you mean?" The human snake asked, puzzled. "It's where you were imprisoned. It's probably above this place." Ichin rolled his eyes and pointed at the dark sky. They had fallen from the bottomless pit. So it was very likely that the snake man had not fallen to the bottom in the first place. Ever since he fell in, he had been suppressed by the mysterious force of nature at the bottom of the pit. Perhaps he was just a careless person. When he felt that he couldn't break free, he fell into hibernation. Hu Shurchen felt that he was most likely a few steps closer to the truth. He silently looked up and exchanged a glance with Crown Prince Lien beside him. Emolien didn't want to talk to this stupid snake. One of the leaders of the group of people who were kneeling and performing the sacrificial ceremony suddenly looked in their direction vigilantly and scolded coldly. Who's there?" Emolien and Yuan Shurchen looked at each other and nodded. Then, they walked out of the darkness and appeared in front of the group of people. Everyone hurriedly stood up from the side of the sinkhole and guarded the side of the sinkhole. Pairs of eyes looked at them in bewilderment. The leader of the group walked out of the crowd with a hunched back and a walking stick. He only had one pitch-black eye. Just like that, he stared fixedly at Emolien and Yuan Shurchen and sized them up. Then he spoke in a ghostly and sinister voice. "Who are you?" His gaze landed on the human snake man, and his pupils constricted slightly. There was a small commotion in the crowd. Chapter 4790. Someone tries his best to restrain his trembling voice and screams. "It's the human snake. It's that human snake. Don't panic, don't panic." The old man once again lets out a cold and calm voice, pacifying the crowd. "Don't forget, in this place, the higher your cultivation base, the more you will be suppressed." A vicious glint flashed across that elder's eyes, and he stared at Emolien and Guchen in amusement. "Shouldn't everyone be very happy that 3 more slaves have come to our kingdom of sin?" The group of people behind him is startled, then suddenly bursts into cheers. One of the older men says excitedly, "That's great, it came down. This human snake finally came down. It's no longer blocking the entrance to the top. As long as we kill it, won't we be able to get out?" Yes. Amori is right, let's kill this human snake. Yes, kill it, we can get out." Zualanshan looks at Emolien and He-chun with a blank expression. "Look at these people's excited expressions. How come I don't remember meeting them before?" He-chun can't help but roll his eyes. "It should be you who blocked their path after hibernation." He pauses. His gaze immediately turns to the sinkhole where everyone is kneeling. This sinkhole wouldn't be the entrance they fell from, right? Emolien shakes her head. "Impossible. Looking at this position, it doesn't feel like it. Moreover, if we would appear here after falling, Then why would we fall up here? It took us 2 days to walk all the way up here. Hichin thinks about it, and says with a puzzled expression, then why are they praying to this sinkhole? Just as they are talking, some scattered things emerge from the sinkhole. The sinkhole is filled with white fog. Only a trace of light is floating inside. The trace of light that Emolien and the others saw from afar came from here. Ah, thank God for the gift. Thank God for the gift. These people kneel down and kowtow to the sinkhole. Each one of them is acting weird. They look like lunatics. Emolien was speechless. These people didn't care about the 3 of them. They dug out the broken things from the heavenly pit and bowed to the heavenly pit with pious faces. They cleaned up the things that came out of the sinkhole and cried out in surprise, "It's a big bag of beans. Heavens, this person actually has beans in his inner world. This is too awesome. Wow, clothes, several sets of clean clothes. Mine, this is mine, mine, mine. All right, everyone, don't fight for it." The old man's eyes flashed, and he said coldly, "Let's pack up first and return to the Great Lord. Don't forget that all resources have to be handed over to the Great Lord before they are distributed." Everyone resentfully retracted their hands, and their gazes once again landed on Emolien, Hichin, and the other 2. One of them smiled wretchedly at the old man. "These boys are quite good-looking. Shall we offer them to the High Lord as well?" The old man nodded, and was about to give the order to tie up Emolien and the other 2. Then, he heard a clamor from behind the sinkhole. Everyone turned around, and saw a few well-dressed guards with whiskers escorting a young man all the way over. What's going on? Chapter 4791. The High Lord has ordered us to push this unappreciative thing into the sinkhole to be dealt with. The old man in the lead suddenly revealed a troubled expression and hesitantly asked, "Commander, has the High Lord really made up his mind?" Previously, he had said that he wanted to bury this person alive. But when things came to a head, he couldn't bear to do it, and hurriedly found someone to bring him back. Fortunately, they didn't really bury this ancestor alive at that time, or else they would have to be buried with him. The High Lord has said that he won't change his mind this time. One of the guards waved his hand impatiently, and said angrily, "You don't know what's good for you. The High Lord is so good to you, and you still dare to make excuses. Since the High Lord has completely lost interest in you, you have no value to exist anymore. It's better to extract all the things in his inner world." Okay. The elderly man looked at the young man who had his head lowered in puzzlement, as if he didn't know how this person had angered the High Lord to this extent. If the High Lord really wanted to kill him, no matter how much he admired and liked this person, he wouldn't be merciful to him. The elderly man shook his head helplessly, and couldn't help but step forward to persuade him. "Little brother, you've been in our territory for almost 3 months. Actually, if you're willing to give in and say a few soft words to our High Lord, this matter will probably be over just like that." The elderly man suddenly saw the young man raise his head and look in his direction. His gaze was cold and cheerless. "Don't talk nonsense with him, just push him down." The leader of the guard shouted impatiently. The elderly man sighed helplessly and signaled to the surrounding onlookers with his eyes. Immediately, 2 burly men stepped forward, one on the left and one on the right. They grabbed the young man's arms and effortlessly dragged him to the sinkhole. The leader of the guards unconsciously glanced in the direction of Emolien and the others. His eyes lit up and instantly widened. "Who are they?" Reporting to the commander, "The 3 of them are newcomers." "Ah, the human snake in front is the one who has been blocking our exit and not letting us out. So it's him." The commander glanced at the snake man with joy. "So the exit passage is now open?" The old man hurriedly nodded. "Indeed. That's great." The guard leader nodded and smiled at the old man. "Old Zhang, you did well this time." The 2 new men were even more handsome than the young man, who was about to be thrown into the sinkhole. "I'm sure the Great Lord will like it even more." After sending away a troublesome manservant and recruiting 2 more, the great feudal lord would definitely reward him handsomely if this matter was settled. On the other side, the young man was about to be pushed into the sinkhole. In the blink of an eye, Emolien took out a handful of shooting star powder and threw it towards the crowd. The meteors scattered, and countless sparks ignited the corners of everyone's clothes. Everyone screamed and hastily patted away the sparks on their bodies. The elderly man looked up and saw that the snake man and the two beautiful men had all disappeared. Not only that, even the young man who was about to be pushed into the sinkhole was nowhere to be seen. "Hurry up and look for him," the elderly man's cold voice sounded again. In any case, they couldn't run out of the range of this underground passage. It was impossible for them to escape from here with their strength. Chapter 4792. Emolien threw a shooting star scatter, while Hu Shurchen went to grab the young man. The four of them quickly ran away, retracing their steps without looking back. Seeing that they did not chase after them, Emolien and Hu Shurchen stopped and turned to look at the young man who was panting. He looked young, and his cultivation level was not low. Why was he panting after just a few steps? The young man held onto the wall with one hand and shook his head at them. I can't run anymore." Seventh Yen, who had transformed into a small dragon and had been coiling around Emolien's wrist, suddenly transformed into a human and jumped in front of the young man. He scolded him coldly. "You're so young, but you're panting so hard after just a few steps. Don't focus too much on improving your cultivation level. While improving, your body's quality has to keep up." The young man looked at Seventh Yen speechlessly and laughed bitterly. This place is oppressed by the laws of nature. The higher one's cultivation level is, the greater the suppression. He suddenly paused and looked at Emolien and Hu Shurchen in confusion. He could feel that these two people's cultivation levels were much higher than his. Why were their movements so agile, as if they were not suppressed? "You're not suppressed." "Yes," Hu Shurchen complained bitterly. "It's so uncomfortable. It hurts everywhere. My bones are sore all over. Also, I feel like my body is heavy after just a few steps. I can't move my legs." Emolien glanced at him speechlessly, then looked at the young man who was panting. She asked, "You were originally at Mystique Venerable rank, right?" Being able to reach Mystique Venerable rank at such a young age meant that he was quite talented. This young man should be quite famous in the Jianghu. Emolien asked tentatively, "What's your name?" "I'm Shenwu. Thank you for saving me just now." "Shenwu? You're from the Shen family manor in Sichuan, right?" "That's right." Shenwu nodded with a slightly excited expression. "This one is alone and has gone out to gain experience. I encountered a large waterspout in the Sea of Forgetfulness and was swept into the undercurrent at the bottom of the sea. Then, as if falling into a bottomless pit, I fell all the way here." Emolien and Yuan Shurchen looked at each other. "You don't know where this is? I hope the two of you will be kind enough to inform us." "This is the River of Forgetfulness's sacrificial sea abyss." Emolien looked at him speechlessly. This Shenwu was really unlucky. He had only come out to train, but he had actually been swept all the way to the seabed abyss. "Brother Shen, why were they worshipping at the side of the giant sinkhole just now?" At this point, Shenwu's face turned slightly pale. "I only know that after they push a living person down, there's an extremely powerful nature deprivation force inside that will grind the living person to pieces and clear out all the items in their inner world. No wonder that person shouted a big bag of beans in surprise just now. It turned out that these people had pushed some foreign cultivators into the sinkhole, deprived them of their inner worlds, and obtained other people's food and tools. What you mean is, those cultivators who unluckily fell into this place from the Sea of Forgetfulness, the stronger their cultivation, in the end he was suppressed and weakened instead?" "That's right." Shenwu nodded and panted as he said, "They call this place the Kingdom of Sin. The natives of this place have taken a group of cultivators with extremely strong cultivation from the outside as slaves." Emolien was speechless. Chapter 4793. Hu Shurchen was also speechless. Therefore, they should be thankful that they only felt a heavy pressure on their bodies, but they were not suppressed to the freezing point like the young man in front of them. Shenwu looked at them suspiciously and thought to himself, "Why are these two sirs acting like nothing happened? Just now, when they saved me and left, their speed was so fast that it didn't seem like they were absolutely suppressed." So, how big of a difference was there between people? Wuxia looked at the young man expressionlessly and coughed lightly. Brother Shen, you mean there is a city in the seabed abyss? Emolian's mouth was truly accurate. Everything he said was spot on. There really was a gathering place here. Shen Wu nodded hurriedly. Zualanshan asked in confusion. How is that possible? I have lived here for at least 200 years. How come I have never known that there is a city in the seabed abyss? Wuxia interrupted him unhappily. I said you hibernated for so long, anything is possible. Zualanshan thought carefully. It was true. He had hibernated for a long time. So long that he could not even remember the length of time. Where did the people in the seabed abyss come from? Zualanshan's eyes were filled with a strange light. It was as if he thought that he had lived alone in the seabed abyss for hundreds of years, and was pitifully poisoned. Actually, there were a lot of neighbors next door, but he did not know anything about them after living here for so long. Those natives, I guess they are the sea people who were exiled here. Some of them have fish tails. I guess they are people of the Forgotten River Dragon family. Wuxia was surprised. Isn't the sacrificial sea abyss a place to worship the souls in the sea? Emolian stood at the side and shook her head, showing a I knew it expression. She said indifferently, it is recorded in the mountain anomaly records. The sea was not peaceful in the early years. Many sea clans fought with each other. In the beginning, the sacrificial sea abyss was used by the Forgotten River Dragon clan and a few other aristocratic families to exile traders. Most of the people who are exiled to the abyss of the sacrificial sea are extremely evil. Realization dawned on Ma Shurchin. So, according to what Shun Brat said, the natives of the evil kingdom are actually the people of the aristocratic families that were exiled from the sea? Emolian nodded. I guess so. What do they eat when they live in this damned place? Ichin was a little surprised. These people were able to survive in such a harsh environment. How strong were their survival skills? Chen Wu nodded. Nothing can grow here, and it's very far from the surface of the sea. Compared to food, the lack of water is a bigger problem. But they soon discovered the existence of the sinkhole. In the beginning, they fought and killed each other. They pushed a portion of the people into the heavenly pit, plundered the resources of the inner world, and shared it among themselves. Shen Wu said with a heavy expression. Gradually, the longer they stay here, the fewer resources they can plunder from the inner world, Shen Wu said. After all, they're just sitting around and eating until they run out of food. Every day that passes means one less day of food. Later, they climbed up the stone wall and found a large glacier above. They chiseled a portion of the ice off and used it as a water source. But the more they use, the less ice they have. Chapter 4794. The natives of the Kingdom of Sin would kill for a little water, a little bean. They became more and more violent, killing each other, until one day, outsiders entered their territory. Shen Wu sighed. At first, they were very afraid, but after probing, they found out that among the outsiders, there was a higher cultivation level. On the contrary, the higher the cultivation level, the more severely they were suppressed. Like me after I came here, I couldn't even take a few steps without gasping for breath. On the contrary, the ordinary people who came here were all walking as if they were flying. Their bodies were not suppressed at all. After they joined the Kingdom of Sin, they were also able to receive better treatment. This allowed them to find a new way to quickly gather resources. They captured these outsiders, those who could be used for hard work, and those who could not be used were thrown into the sinkhole to quickly gather resources. Wait, Hichin said curiously. From what you're saying, what you mean is that the natives of the Kingdom of Sin are not affected by this power of suppression. No, Shen Wu nodded with certainty. Today there are about 50 natives. Most of them are above the deity realm, and are not suppressed at all. They belong to a special group in the Kingdom of Sin. Ma Shurchin pondered and nodded. So the outsiders with high cultivation were suppressed like dogs, while the natives were all in the god realm. No wonder these outsiders were all reduced to slaves. Aren't they just a bunch of lambs waiting to be slaughtered? Emolian said indifferently. There is nothing special about them. Just like the power of deprivation allowed by the natural law in the sinkhole, it is fair to everyone. Whoever is thrown in will also be deprived. The reason why the natives are so special must be that they have a secret. They can avoid being suppressed by the natural law here. Ma Shurchen nodded repeatedly upon hearing this. Although Emolien, this guy, normally looked very loathsome, his analytical skills were still very reliable. This was most likely the truth. There was nothing special about it at all. It was the natives who had mastered the risk of avoiding the natural law suppression, so they could do whatever they wanted here. Chunwu looked doubtfully at Emolien, and he Chun. Your Excellencies, are you not being suppressed, or is it that the suppression is not complete? It should be the second situation you mentioned. Hu Shurchen smiled bitterly. What about this senior holy beast? The snake man proudly raised his chin, thought for a moment and said, I think it's okay. There is indeed a suppressive force, but it's not that strong. You should be the guardian beast placed at the exit of the sacrificial sea, by the aristocratic families of the River of Forgetfulness. Chun Wu continued talking to himself. I've heard them mention you before. It's because you're guarding the exit of the sacrificial sea, that the people of Sin Kingdom have no choice but to stay here and continue to suffer. Hu Shurchen pursed his lips and patted Chun Wu's shoulder. You're thinking too much. He was banished here 100 years ago. Because he was too bored, he had been hibernating all this time. Even without him guarding the exit of the sacrificial sea abyss, they wouldn't be able to leave. Even the heavenly Tao might not be able to do anything about the natural absorption and suppression power of this place. It is innate, and does not go against the laws of the heavenly Tao. Chapter 4795. Thinking of her and Emolien's situation, a trace of worry flashed across her eyes. She really shouldn't be gloating over others' misfortune. After all, they were both unlucky and couldn't leave the abyss of the sacrificial sea. A trace of anxiety flashed across Shen Wu's eyes. Are we going to stay like this for the rest of our lives? Of course it's impossible. Emolien replied icily as he walked forward. Shen Wu was taken aback. Your Excellency, are you going back to Sin City? If you don't have a foolproof plan, it's best that we don't go back first. There are about 200 citizens in Sin City. Other than the 50 over aboriginals, the remaining people are not to be trifled with. The slaves are currently working in the Karst cave. Their High Lord GC has a wild idea and wants to turn the Karst cave into a sleeping chamber. Emolien stopped and turned to look at Shen Wu. You stay here first. Your Excellencies aren't familiar with Sin City. If you insist on going, I'll take you through a small path. It'll be more discreet. After all, I've escaped from Sin City 5 or 6 times. I'm quite familiar with the complicated corridors. Shen Wu smiled bitterly and nodded at Emolien and the rest. Glancing at him, Yuan Shurchen deliberated and asked, I heard the guard's words just now. Did the Great Lord capture you and make you the commander-in-chief? Looks like this guy won't give in even if he dies. Shen Wu's handsome face was slightly embarrassed. He hurriedly said, I'm already engaged. Of course, I can't betray my fiancé. Although we've never met. Our marriage was arranged by my family. No, but I thought, since we're engaged then I'm her fiancé. I must be loyal to her. Emolien's eyes brightened. She went forward and patted Shen Wu's shoulder, revealing an admiring expression. You're not bad. Shen Wu was inexplicably admired by Prince Emo, although he did not understand where this sir's admiration came from. When he heard this sir say, I will take you out of here to him, he inexplicably felt like he had found a powerful backer. His mood suddenly became a lot more cheerful, as if the promise of this distinguished person in front of him would definitely be fulfilled. Yuan Shurchen glanced at Prince Emo speechlessly. Then, he turned around and exchanged glances with Snake Man, who was still confused about the situation. Zhulan Mountain, how is your current situation? About 50%, the Snake Man answered honestly. Yuchen cursed inwardly. Damn. This human snake was indeed cunning. No wonder when he bumped into him in the corridor earlier, he tried to curry favor with them, and acted as if he wanted to befriend them. He also repeatedly stated that the reason why he fought with them before was because he had been poisoned with the berserk potion. It turned out that this fellow's strength had been suppressed by half. He recognized the reality at a glance, and quickly pretended to be a glutton, acting obedient in front of them. He and Emolien should have been suppressed by 30% of their strength. If the two of them joined forces, they could definitely beat Snake Man to a pulp at that time. Damn, the two of them were so smart. But they were actually tricked by this old ghost. Snake Man secretly glanced at Yuan Shurchen. His old face was a bit awkward. Don't misunderstand. I'm not afraid of you, so I reconciled with you. This old man thinks that I don't have any deep hatred with you two juniors. Chapter 4796. The reason why we fought was all because of those scoundrels from Wangchuan Dragon Clan. We have the same goal now, which is to leave the abyss of the sacrificial sea. So it's necessary to put aside our prejudices for now, isn't it? Like hell I'll believe you. Jichen rolled her eyes at him in exasperation. The snake person glanced at Emolien again, and studied his expression. He discovered that this young man's expression was apathetic, and when his phoenix eyes swept over him, they were cold and desolate. For some reason he felt a chill down his spine. From his experience, this young man did not seem like a good person who would repay evil with kindness. Let's go. Emolien spat out this word without even looking back as he led the way forward. The snake man was right about one thing. Now that they had the same goal, they should leave first. As for the debt between him and this stinky snake, he would settle it one day. Did he think that he could let it go just like that? Dream on. After all, this stinky snake was the reason why he and Hu Shurchen fell into the abyss of the sacrificial sea so miserably. The snake man felt a gust of cold wind above his head, and his body trembled for no reason. Just as he was about to shift, he saw Hu Shurchen glancing at him coldly. Why are you looking at me like that? What was wrong with these two young men? They gave off a sinister vibe when they looked at others. I just wanted to remind you that your current form is a little too much. Hu Shurchen sneered. The snake man looked down at himself. He was now a snake with a human body and a snake tail. He was about 2.5 meters tall, and felt comfortable looking down at Emolien and Hu Shurchen. However, he knew that they were about to sneak into the city of Sin. This beast form would be very eye-catching, and he might be targeted immediately. The snake man obediently transformed into a human. Hu Shurchen turned around, and his jaw almost dropped. You, big brother, wear pants. Emolien was speechless. Fortunately, his wife was not here. Otherwise, he would have destroyed this serpent's body. The snake man. This old man has never transformed into a human in the past. This was the dignity of an almighty holy beast. Their beast form was their true glory. He looked a little embarrassed, and tried to defend himself. It's all your fault. What change? Hurry up and lend me a pair of pants. Emolien. Fortunately, Shenwu reacted quickly. He immediately took out a new set of clothes from his inner world, and offered it to Senior Snake with both hands. The corner of Zhuo mouth twitched imperceptibly. He expressionlessly took the clothes and put them on. He coldly said, You brat, this old man will remember you. Shenwu was speechless. It was clearly a sentence of gratitude. But why did it sound like revenge when Senior Lan Shan said it? With Shenwu leading the way, the four of them quietly took a small path to the back door of Nifis City. During this period, they did not encounter the old man and his group who had previously worshipped the sinkhole. Wait a moment, Emolien said in a low voice. Then, she took out 4 blue paper charms from her sleeve and distributed them to everyone. Ji Chen's eyes lit up. Snake Man and Chunwu looked at him in confusion. What is this? Hu Shurchen hurriedly opened the paper charms and said in a low voice, Don't ask so much. Use it. It's good stuff. In just a few seconds, Snake Man and Chunwu saw that Hu Shurchen's appearance had changed drastically. He transformed from a handsome young man into an ordinary young man at the prime of his life. With such an average-looking face, he would definitely not attract anyone's attention in a crowd. Chapter 4797. Is this the legendary transformation talisman? Shenwu held the talisman in his hand excitedly, and turned to look at Emolienne. Seeing that Emolienne had also applied the talisman to herself, Shenwu hurriedly followed suit. In just a moment, the four people's appearances had changed drastically. Emolienne had turned into an ordinary middle-aged man. Everyone was stunned. She really didn't expect that a peerlessly handsome man, with peerless talent, would turn into an ordinary commoner after activating the transformation talisman. Shenwu had also turned into an ordinary-looking young man. There was an additional birthmark on his face, which made him look very different from his original handsome appearance. The worst one was probably the human snake. He simply could not believe it. He looked down at his bare body and fixed his gaze on that pair of small hands. The clothes that Shenwu had offered were now all piled up at his feet. He crawled out from the pile of clothes. His small body was about the size of a 5 or 6-year-old child. His black eyes were filled with embarrassment and indignation. He glared at Emolienne and shouted angrily, What is going on? Don't shout. Hu Shurchen hurriedly covered his mouth, a mischievous smile flashing across her eyes. Why do you always like to be naked? Hu Shurchen coughed lightly and rummaged through her inner world. She took out a piece of girl's clothing and threw it to him. Make do with this. Isn't this a girl's clothing? The human snake was even more furious. His shouts were still suppressed by Hu Shurchen's palm. Why are you shouting? Aren't we just making do with it for a while? When we enter the city and see a tailor shop, I'll buy you another one that fits you. Shenwu, brothers, this is the city of Sin, where resources are scarce. There are no tailor shops, jewelry shops and the like, which are available in big cities here. The human snake glared at them angrily. I'm not wearing it. Then you can be naked, Emolienne said expressionlessly. As long as you're not afraid of being ugly, your father is also not afraid of being embarrassed. The human snake. This fellow's little face instantly flushed red. He pointed his little finger at Emolienne and trembled. You. This guy actually dared to take advantage of this old man and claim to be his father? Emolienne was still expressionless. She reached out and lifted the little body of the snake man. In order to prevent others from spying on you, from now on, your identity is my son. They are your uncles. Ma Shurchen held back her laughter and finally swallowed it back into her stomach. The corner of Shenwu's mouth twitched. Seeing Snake Man's sullen and angry glare, he waved his hand repeatedly. You flatter me. You don't have to call me uncle. Be careful when an outsider comes to investigate. Shichen thought, Shenwu this child. He's been corrupted by Prince Emo so quickly. Emolienne said coldly. Get used to your status. Call me father. Achoo. Arbor rubbed his little nose and put down the medical book in his hand. He subconsciously stroked his little belly and muttered to himself. If Jojo's Lotus knew that he was going to be a father, I wonder how happy he would be. A few poison-tailed butterflies fluttered in through the window and landed in the palm of her hand. Still can't find it? Arbor sighed and raised a hand to stroke the butterfly's wings. But it was true. This place was vast and boundless. It was indeed very difficult for these poison-tailed butterflies that she kept in the storage talisman to find little Taisui. It was her fault for not being able to open the star domain. If she had more poison-tailed butterflies, she could track little Taisui in all directions. Chapter 4798. That day, after she and the little Taisui were blasted away by the sea's explosion, she was picked up by eldest Qin, but the little Taisui was nowhere to be found. Although she didn't say anything, she secretly released the poison-tailed butterflies to search for it. Some things didn't need to be done by others, especially those from the Qin estate. Arbor didn't want to owe any of them a favor. Qiaomu sighed. Although she was anxious, there was nothing she could do for the time being. Her divine sense wasn't stable, so she couldn't open her star domain. Even if she was anxious, she couldn't rush it. Hopefully, the soul-calming pill she took every day could help her recover as soon as possible. Laughter came from outside the door. Arbor was so noisy that she could only put down the medical book in her hand and put it away in her storage talisman. Who's making so much noise over there? A maidservant immediately walked over and bowed respectfully. Today's weather is good. Miss, do you want to take a walk on the deck? Miss Yang, Sister Pinger. and the others are fishing on the deck. Arbor expressionlessly said, "Oh." As soon as she heard that moron Yang Fengyan was making a fuss on the deck with a few other women, she didn't want to go anywhere. She just wanted to lie down in the cabin for a while. However, Yang Fengyan, Ping and the other women were too noisy. It was impossible for her to fall asleep. After lying on the bed for a while, Arbor was about to fall asleep in a daze when she heard a light knock on the door. The maidservant went to open the door and cautiously said, "Miss is asleep." The one who came to knock was an old mama. Hearing this, she was startled. "It's almost evening. Miss hasn't woken up from her afternoon nap? What's the matter?" Arbor's cold voice sounded. It was like jade beads rolling into a jade plate. The crisp tinkling sound made people's hearts tremble. The mama didn't dare to be impudent. She hurriedly said, "Miss Biao and Miss Ping invite you to the deck to get some fresh air." Arbor couldn't help but sneer in her heart. They're here to cause trouble again. It seems they really want to die. Lord Jojo had never been someone who was afraid of trouble, just like the divine flower of the snow domain. If someone came to provoke her again and again, then don't blame her for directly crushing them to death. After washing up, a certain person chose a bright red battle suit and went out valiantly. He had made a lot of unique battle suits a while ago. The skirt was embroidered with black lotus flowers, and there were 2 small golden beads on the sleeves. The little stoic expressionlessly walked to the deck. A woman with a voluptuous figure walked up to her and gave her a hypocritical smile. She called out softly, "Crown Princess, you're finally willing to come out for a walk." Arbor gave her a significant look. The woman felt as if she was being stared at by something, and all the hair on her body stood on end. Why did it feel so strange? He felt that the Crown Princess at this moment was inexplicably very dangerous. Arbor's slightly cold eyes looked at the woman beside the railing not far away. Yang Fengyan and the 2 little maidservants beside her had their backs to him. Sure enough, Yang Fengyan was holding a fishing rod, and the 2 maidservants were giggling and jumping next to her. They said repeatedly, "Miss, you're so amazing. You've already caught your 3rd fish." "Crown Princess, there's another fishing rod over there. Do you want to try it?" Pinger asked with a grin. "Not interested." The little Crown Princess directly rejected Pinger expressionlessly, causing the latter's bellyful of words to abruptly stop. Chapter 4799. This feeling was truly terrible. It was as if a fist landed on a ball of cotton. She couldn't find a place to exert force even if she wanted to. The little Crown Princess's lukewarm attitude made Miss Ping feel awkward, and she inexplicably found it difficult to continue the conversation. If Miss Ping interacted with the little stoic for a long time, she would certainly understand that this was the little Crown Princess's unique ability to kill conversations. The woman chuckled awkwardly and then said, "Then Crown Princess, just sit here for a while and enjoy the sea breeze. You can't stay cooped up in the room all the time. It's easy to get sick from boredom. Your whole family is sick." Arbor couldn't be bothered to pay attention to this chattering woman. With a glance, he sat down at the table with tea and snacks on the side of the deck. Ping walked up with a smile and sat down next to the little Crown Princess. Just as she was about to speak, she suddenly heard the little stoic ask coldly, "Who are you?" "Everyone." The little Crown Princess was seriously too much. She had already stayed on this ship for several days, but she actually didn't even recognize Miss Ping, who was by the eldest young sir's side. Pinger's expression also completely froze because of the Crown Princess's words. She finally found her voice after searching for a while. Miss Pinger smiled even more awkwardly and said, "Crown Princess, you're a noble person with a forgetful memory. We've even met a few times in the Guqin Gardens, when we were on Seacombe Planet." The young Crown Prince Consort looked her up and down. "Is that so?" If it weren't for the fact that Pinger knew that the seemingly harmless little stoic in front of her actually had an extremely formidable and outstanding trait, she would have slapped her face. She really wanted to give this stoic a big slap across her face. "Who told you to look down on people and not recognize me? You'll get it later." Pinger bit her lips awkwardly and said with a mocking laugh, "It's fine even if the Crown Princess doesn't remember. We'll be on the same ship in the future, so we'll be familiar with each other after talking more. Who's on the same ship as you? The little stoic harumphed and turned her head around, her gaze landing on Yang Fengyin's back. You guys didn't invite me to sit on the deck, because there's a big show for me to watch later, right? Ping, Er's heart skipped a beat. But she steadied her expression, and didn't reveal any clues in front of the little stoic. She believed that she and Yang Fengyin had a tacit understanding of each other, so it was impossible for them to be exposed. It seemed that even though this little crown princess had been invited by them, she was still very wary of them. That sentence just now was actually to test her, wasn't it? Although she was young, she seemed to be extremely scheming. You couldn't see any emotion on her paralyzed face, so you couldn't get any information from her face. As Qiaomu sat there, she leisurely twisted the white jade bracelet on her wrist. Suddenly, the sound of water splashing could be heard. The two maidservants beside Yang Fengyin jumped up and down in surprise. Miss, it's here, it's here. It's another big fish. Yang Fengyin's back was facing Arbor, and the corners of her mouth secretly hooked up in a cold smile. Suddenly, she flicked her wrist and hooked the fishing line. A big fish that seemed to weigh about 10 caddies was dragged out of the water by her. It created a splash in the air. The heavy fish was lifted up by the fishing rod and spun half a circle in the air. Then, the fish suddenly broke free from the fishing line and smashed down toward where Arbor was sitting. With Arbor's eyesight, he had already seen the big fish's true appearance when Yang Fengyin reeled in the line. A pair of dead fish eyes emitted an abnormal green light. Chapter 4800. The fish's mouth opened and closed, revealing 2 rows of ghastly fangs. This wasn't a normal fish at all, but a gigantic corpse fish. A cold glint flashed through Arbor's eyes, and he glanced at the gigantic corpse fish pouncing at him. Suddenly, his body flashed to the left. The speed of the teleportation talisman was so fast that it dazzled the eyes. Miss Ping simply didn't see clearly how the young crown princess moved. When she turned her head back, the crown princess was already standing at the cabin door. At the same time, that gigantic corpse fish landed next to her feet with a plop, opening its mouth to reveal 2 rows of saw-like fangs. Crunch! The big corpse fish bit the leg of the stool, and immediately bit it into 2. Miss Ping jumped in fright and hastily retreated with small, quick steps. Her charming face instantly turned ghastly pale, and she let out a cry of alarm. Mississippi, upon seeing this, the 2 robust elderly nannies beside her hastily came forward to support her. However, that gigantic corpse fish suddenly leaped up and bit at one of the elderly nanny's leg. Crack! The corpse fish bit empty air, but the sound of the 2 rows of saw-like fangs snapping together made Miss Ping and those 2 elderly nannies jump in fright. Sir Jojo stood on the side and coldly watched this farce in front of him, a faint luster flitting through his eyes. He met Yang Fengyin's eyes, who was standing next to the railing. Before Miss Yang could retract her mocking smile, she chillingly met the young crown princess's chilly gaze. She jumped in fright and hastily retreated a step. Her back bumped into the railing heavily. In this instant, she felt that the little stoic's gaze was incomparably deep and carried a chilling glint that made people tremble with fear. It made her heart pound like a drum, and her entire heart was suspended high up in the air, swaying up and down in a perturbed state. This feeling was truly ominous. Yang Fengyin muttered in her heart, and was about to quickly leave the deck. However, she heard the sound of splashing water again behind her. Yang Fengyin looked back, and saw a big carcass fish with half-rotten scales and bubbling mouth jumping up from the water. It jumped to the side of the railing, and opened its mouth to bite her arm. Ah! The 2 little girls were so scared that they slipped and fell to the ground, dragging Yang Fengyin down with them. Yang Fengyin groaned, and fell heavily to the ground. She was caught off guard and fell on her back. It was ugly and painful, and a trace of panic flashed in her eyes. She sat up as fast as she could and saw 2 big corpse fishes on the deck, one on the left and one on the right. They swam quickly on the deck and pounced on her, revealing their eerie white teeth. Yang Fengyin hurriedly twisted the defensive spiritual artifact between her fingers. A shield instantly formed in front of her chest and back. At the same time, one of the big corpse fish had already bitten her back and was sent flying by the shield. Yang Fengyan was scared witless, and her entire face was ghastly pale. She scrambled and crawled towards Miss Ping, and the others. Ping was also almost scared silly. If it weren't for the nanny beside her fiercely pulling her, she would still be standing there foolishly. Let's go, Miss Ping quickly returned to the cabin. Seeing that there were no less than 7 to 8 big corpse fishes that were over 1 meter long jumping up one after another, the old nanny knew that the situation had changed and was somewhat out of control. She hastily protected Miss Ping and ran towards the cabin first. Arbor looked at this scene with a spurious smile and turned to leave. Chapter 4801. She then heard Yang Fengyan shout in exasperation behind her. Stop right there. You! Is this your doing? Your methods are truly ruthless. Everything was fine before you came to the deck, but now so many corpse fish suddenly jumped up. Ah! The two maidservants only knew some flowery martial arts, so they were already panicking when they saw a dozen large corpse fish jump up at once. Seeing that Miss Yang was still in the mood to leisurely bickering with the young crown princess, they hastily pulled her and shouted, Miss, let's hide in the cabin first. It was better to let the fifth young master send people to clean up these corpse fish on the deck. Arbor originally didn't want to pay attention to her, but when he heard her chatter incessantly, he turned around and glanced at her. Soon after, he revealed a sly sneer at her. Better not smile, Yang Fengyan thought. This smile was like using a knife to cut open a hole at the corner of her mouth, so icy that it was a bit frightening. Compared to when she wore a stoic face, it was even more frightening and frightening. You will die. The little stoic's chilly voice drilled into her ears. Yang Fengyan's heart felt like it had been stung by something, and she couldn't restrain her terror and started trembling. The dozen large corpse fish slid and leaped up, abruptly jumping forward. With a crunch, they bit down on a young maidservant's calf, causing her to immediately fall to the ground in pain and roll around. Yang Fengyan was so frightened that her face was drained of color, and she retreated backwards repeatedly. She shook off the other young maidservant's hand and directly threw her into the school of corpse fish before fleeing backwards. That maidservant had an incredulous expression on her face, probably not expecting that she would be abandoned by her master so easily. She felt pain in her ankle, and she looked down in horror with widened eyes. She saw 2 to 3 large corpse fish biting the back of her foot, unwilling to let go no matter what. The 2 maidservants were rolling around on the deck. One of them hugged a large corpse fish that had pounced on her chest, and tightly hugged the fish's head with a terrified expression. However, the big fish was unusually slippery, and it nimbly broke free from her hands and bit her face, causing her to scream in pain. Yang Fengyan was so frightened by the scream that her chest was pounding. She ran to Ping and the others in a panic, pulling her and shouting, let's go quickly. At this time, Ping also did not want to stay on the deck any longer. Being pulled by Yang Fengyan, the two of them were so scared that their faces turned pale. It was as if they were stepping on a pile of cotton. Their legs were soft, and their bodies were weak from fear. They stumbled left and right, and crawled towards the cabin. Arbor's voice came from behind them. Why are you running so fast? As if possessed, Yang Fengyan glanced behind her, and saw the little stoic standing eerily by the door. Her fingers suddenly twitched. A black light suddenly flashed in front of her eyes. When she opened her eyes again, she saw a fat corpse fish smashing towards her face. Ping hastily broke free from Yang Fengyan's hand and flung her away before falling backwards in a panic. The fat corpse fish abruptly leaped in front of Yang Fengyan, but Yang Fengyan stretched out both hands and firmly pressed down on the slippery fish body. It was too close. Yang Fengyan only saw black water gurgling out of the fish's mouth and dripping down. The dead fish's mouth opened and closed with a smacking sound, and the 2 rows of jagged fangs in its mouth made clanging sounds like steel thorns. Yang Fengyan was so scared that her face turned pale, and she opened her mouth to scream, ah! Chapter 4802. That big, fat corpse fish faced her face just like that. The dead fish's mouth opened and closed in front of her, snapping and biting the air, scaring Yang Fengyan into letting out a series of shrieks. However, just as she let out that high-pitched shriek, her expression abruptly changed. A small corpse fish the size of a thumb suddenly darted out of the corpse fish's mouth and flew to her lips with a whoosh, biting her. What would it feel like to have lips with a small, sticky corpse fish? Yang Fengyan's mind instantly went blank, and even her breathing abruptly stopped. In this instant, the colorful world in her eyes completely lost its original color. It was as if the thing in front of her was only a black and white skeleton. Everything in the world lost its original color. The little stoic that appeared in her line of sight was leaning against the cabin door and staring at her with a cold and desolate gaze, as if she was looking at a corpse. She was that corpse. At this time, the little stoic's words seemed to jump out of her mind. You will die. Yang Fengyan's pupils abruptly contracted, and she desperately grabbed that small corpse fish and fiercely flung it in Arbor's direction. However, before it could even approach her, that corpse fish was struck by a thunder fire that darted out from behind Arbor. With a whoosh, the small fish's body instantly disintegrated into pieces. Arbor's gaze chilled, and he involuntarily clenched his fists. He mechanically turned his head, and his small head moved inch by inch until his line of sight finally fell on the railing above the ship. A air transportation spiritual tool was currently docking and descending on the deck. Young Master Omega Kotoku jumped down from the spiritual tool with a cold expression. The thunder fire ignited on his fingertips and slithered across the deck, burning the shoals of corpse fish in his path to ashes. In just a flash, the corpse fish that were originally still alive and kicking on the deck were annihilated by him single-handedly. People continuously jumped down from the air transportation spiritual tool. Fatty Wintermelon, the tall and thin man Fei Zhuang, and the twin brothers Tang Quan and Tang Li. There was also Ling, that transvestite big shot who disguised himself as a woman and kept her in the dark when they first met. At this moment, he was dressed in white and was dressed like an elegant and charming young master. Eldest young Sir Qin also jumped onto the boat with his men. When this fellow saw Sir Jojo's lukewarm gaze, he rubbed his nose awkwardly. Damn liar. He had promised not to inform Omega Kotoku, but now Omega Kotoku was here. Eldest young master inexplicably read the words damn liar in Lord Xiao's eyes. A thought flashed through his mind, so he hurriedly shook his head and answered honestly, I swear, I really didn't inform second brother. When I went out to sea, I just happened to meet him. Eldest young Master Qin wanted to cry but had no tears. He thought to himself, the affairs of the world are impermanent. But judging from the little stoic's disdainful expression, she clearly didn't quite believe him. The little girl is here too. Dugaling called out happily. Arbor ignored him. Yang Fengyan, who had been greatly frightened, was now in a state of madness. She threw herself in front of eldest young master and second young master sobbing. Eldest cousin, second cousin, save me. It's her, she's the one who harmed me. She summoned those large corpse fish to bite us. My two maidservants have already been killed by her. Yang Fengyan's pupils contracted repeatedly as she pointed at the two maidservants who were lying on the ground, barely breathing. The two maidservants' limbs and faces were riddled with holes from the corpse fish's gnawing. From her angle, she just happened to see the whites of one of the maidservants' eyes. It was truly appalling. Chapter 4803. Yang Fengyan threw herself in front of the two young masters of the Qin estate and wailed. It's Arbor who harmed me. She was the one who attracted all these zombie fish. Kill her. Arbor couldn't be bothered to waste words with Yang Fengyan, and directly issued an order. A white light suddenly shot out from his wrist, and the little white snake transformed into a giant snake in the air. It swooped down and whipped at Yang Fengyan's body. Don't whip her. She's about to turn into a zombie. Arbor knitted his brows and hastily reminded. Don't touch her, she stinks too much. The great void serpent's enormous body abruptly froze in midair, and then it whipped its tail at the railing next to it. Half of the railing leaped up and viciously smashed at Yang Fengyan's head. Yang Fengyan immediately shrieked in horror, and scrambled to crawl behind eldest young Sir Qin. However, before she could crawl behind eldest young Sir Qin, that half of the railing struck her head. That heavy and ferocious blow immediately smashed her to the ground. She fell forward onto the deck and spat out a mouthful of blood. The great void serpent retracted its enormous body and hissed at her, spitting out a dense black mist from its mouth. Everyone watched as that black mist revolved around Yang Fengyan's body like numerous thin black snakes. Before long, that Yang Fengyan was enveloped by the black power of the netherworld. Eldest Yang Serchin opened his mouth, but swallowed back the words he wanted to say. On the other hand, young Sir Omega Katoka didn't look too shocked. He merely swept an indifferent glance at Yang Fengyan before retracting his gaze. What did she do? He understood this little stoic too well. She wouldn't slaughter people in a rage if they didn't provoke her into a corner. This Yang Fengyan must have done something that crossed the little stoic's bottom line. She wanted to kill me, Arbor said coldly, and left the deck without looking back. There was no need to wait for the result. Yang Fengyan, who was enveloped by the power of the netherworld, was doomed. Who knew what disgusting medicine this Yang Fengyan used to actually gather a shoal of zombie fish over? It was called fishing, but in fact he wanted to take advantage of the chaos to attack her. In the end he suffered the consequences of his own actions. She didn't know if she had too much confidence in herself or underestimated Arbor. Arbor didn't come out for dinner. Instead, he casually ate some food in the cabin. When the Omega Kotoku arrived, Arbor couldn't help but frown. Even though this trip had the same goal as them, which was to head to the Pool Lotus sacred territory, but he really didn't want to be on the same side as the Qin Estates people. It looked like she had to think of a way to leave tomorrow. The little stoic reflexively stroked her belly, the dividing line of the venerable peach blossom immortal in the seabed abyss. When Duan Yu woke up with a start, the sky had already safely darkened. Inside the tent, the storm continued. A cold wind blew in from outside the tent, causing the candles to sway in the wind. What time is it? It's almost midnight, Your Majesty. Xiao Kazi hurriedly pulled the curtain of the tent closer and quickly walked forward. He reminded her softly, there's still 2 hours left. However, Duan Yu didn't feel sleepy at all. He stared at the swaying candlelight with his obsidian peach blossom eyes, as he pushed aside the brocade quilt and sat up. He had been feeling a bit vexed these past 2 days. The people he sent to the River of Forgetfulness to scout for information still hadn't returned, and he hadn't received any news until now. Hopefully, he was just overthinking things. Let's get ready. Duan Yu pursed his lips and stood up after draping his clothes over himself. His long black hair hung loosely by his waist. Xiao Kezi nodded and lifted the tent curtain. Chapter 4804. A fierce gust of wind blew inside. Duan Yu's black hair fluttered in the wind, and his pitch-black eyes couldn't help but narrow for a moment. When the 3 armies assembled, it was already brightly lit outside. All the generals had finished their preparations, and were waiting for the right time to set off to attack the city. They had been biding their time, and sent people to infiltrate Yin City, to get in touch with the defending generals. Since ancient times, Yin City had been an easy place to defend, but difficult to attack. Even after being besieged by the Tianyin faction for so long, they still managed to defend their last line of defense. The Harpies couldn't enter the city to wreak havoc, but the Tianyin faction leader didn't seem to be in a hurry to besiege the city. He merely surrounded the city, as if waiting for the citizens of Yin City to run out of ammunition and food before surrendering. Now that Yin City's defending army knew that His Majesty was outside the city and had secretly mobilized many troops, their hearts calmed down. At that time, they only needed to cooperate with His Majesty and coordinate with him from the inside. They didn't need to fear those bastards who couldn't kill the Tianyin faction. Begin the operation. 8th Young Master Qi led the troops forward and gave the order. A middle-aged general mounted his horse and saluted with cupped fists in Duan Yu's direction. Then he turned his horse around and led a group of light-armored cavalrymen to take a shortcut to the mountain behind Yin City. Duan Yu's gaze aloofly landed in the direction of the light-armored cavalrymen. Prepare 20 Godstone cannons. Boom! When the Godstone cannons fired at the harpies hovering in the air, most of the harpies were perched outside the city walls, waiting for orders from the higher-ups of the Tianyin faction. As soon as the cannons sounded, The soldiers inside the city walls in heavy armor and helmets popped out and pushed large catapults to bombard the harpies. Coupled with the power of the godstone cannons, huge rocks fell from the sky and smashed into many harpies, causing them to shriek and fall from the sky. From start to end, the Battle of Yin City only lasted half a night. The defending army in the city was truly infuriated by the Tianyin faction. So when they received news of His Majesty's personal arrival, they were all pumped up and extremely courageous. The cooperation of the two sides forced the Tianyin faction to abandon the city and flee. Unfortunately, a group of light cavalrymen entered the city first after receiving Duan Yu's order and headed straight for the underground water protection device. After opening the sluice gate, the river water was diverted to the channel outside the city. There was already a group of water spiritualists standing guard there, storing the water in the channels outside the city. Not long after, the underground protective device burst into flames and soared into the sky. The remaining harpies who couldn't escape in time were all shaken to the ground. Like moths, they pounced towards the blazing fire. Unfortunately, it was not because they liked the blazing fire, but because they could not control their bodies. They were sucked in by a powerful gravitational force, and their faces were distorted as they were dragged down. Duan Yu led the three armies into the city, stepping on the severed limbs of the harpies. The city guards opened the city gates to welcome them, leading a group of commoners to welcome them with tears in their eyes. For the past few days, they had been besieged in the city. It was indeed quite tragic. Those who survived were all covered in dust and grime at this time. Your Majesty, a rider passed through the crowd and quickly came over. Xiao Kezi, who was following closely beside Duan Yu, quickly said, "Yi, who you sent out has returned." Duan Yu's expression abruptly changed after he took the secret letter from the hidden guard. Emolian and the venerable peach blossom immortal fell into the abyss of the sacrificial sea. Jojo went missing. Chapter 4805. Crash. A set of fine porcelain on the table was swept to the ground by someone. "Trash, you're all a bunch of trash." A middle-aged man with his back facing the crowd bellowed furiously, before abruptly turning around. His face was masked with a cold glint in his eyes. "There are so many of you, but you can't even take down a tiny yin city. Now all your efforts have been for naught." The two team leaders nodded submissively before whispering, Who knew that His Majesty the Emperor of Tsang Prefecture would actually come so quickly? They activated Yin City's underground defense system. We were also caught off guard, so no need to find excuses. The masked middle-aged man shouted angrily. "It's because of you trash that you had to hand over the city you were about to obtain to someone else." The two team leaders didn't dare to retort after being berated so harshly. After the middle-aged man finished his torrent of abuse, one of the team leaders finally couldn't resist whispering, Vice Hall Master Ghost. Then what should we do now? Return to the headquarters, or the masked middle-aged man they called Vice Hall Master Ghost harumphed. Do you still have the face to return? You haven't even finished your task, so where are you going to return to? The two team leaders hung their heads and slumped their shoulders, not daring to utter a word after being scolded. Vice Hall Master Ghost muttered to himself for a moment before saying, "Continue attacking Yin City. This stronghold is too important, so we must take it down." This place was surrounded by water, so the environment was rather independent. There were also defensive systems underground, making it easy to defend but hard to attack. If they could take this place and make it their Heavenly Fate Empire's first major stronghold, in Tsang Prefecture presumably, things would develop even more smoothly in the future. Yin City was their first stronghold in Tsang Prefecture, so they had to take it no matter the price. Take down. Duan Yu repeatedly flipped through the letter. There were only a few words in the message, which only said that Emolian and the venerable peach blossom immortal were sucked into the seabed abyss. Xiao Qiao disappeared in the river of forgetfulness's explosion. Where did the little fellow go? Duan Yu clutched the letter and paced back and forth in the room. Even though Xiao Kezi could tell that he was feeling uneasy, he did not dare to say much. He stood by the door like a log and bowed his head submissively. Go invite General Zhou over. Duan Yu paused and turned around to order. Yes. Just as Xiao Kezi was about to leave, he heard Duan Yu call out from behind him. Wait, invite 8th young Sir Qi over as well. Yes. Xiao Kezi hurriedly retreated. A short while later, the two of them were invited into Duan Yu house. They were currently staying in the Yin City garrison residence. The garrison lord naturally gave up the best room for His Majesty to stay in. However, even the most luxurious residence in the entire garrison manor was partially destroyed by the flames of war. Duan Yu's current location was actually the Lord Guard's study that he usually used. In the room, there was a brocade couch leaning against the window. When young Master Chirui and General Zhou strode in, they saw His Majesty sitting on the brocade couch with a dignified expression and a pensive look. Duan Yu finally returned to his senses when he heard their footsteps. He nodded at them. The Heavenly Fate Empire definitely won't take this lying down after suffering such a huge loss. Duan Yu said coldly, they will definitely gather their firepower and make a comeback tonight. You must be fully prepared. Have everyone rest for 4 hours first. Chapter 4806. Begin guarding in the middle of the night. Duan Yu's expression was aloof as he said with certainty. We are guessing that they will infiltrate Yin City before dawn and attack us wantonly. 8th young Master Qi's expression turned grave. The city's garrison is fatigued after several days of continuous battles. It's very unsuitable for them to fight again. Duan Yu coldly said, tell them what's at stake. It's their own business whether they want to live or not. We brought less than 5,000 men. If the garrison can't make up for it in time, we will undoubtedly lose tonight's battle. 8th young Master Qi's expression turned even graver when he heard this. Your Majesty means that you are guessing that the people blessed by the heavens will definitely attack Yin City again tonight? But didn't they just lose a battle? Don't they need to rest and reorganize before? 8th young Master Qi paused and met Duan Yu's starry eyes. It suddenly occurred to him that the people blessed by the heavens probably didn't need to rest. Most of them weren't living beings, so why would they need to rest? Taking advantage of the fact that Yin City's garrison was at its most fatigued and lax, it was the best time to launch a sneak attack. We will stay until dawn and leave. Don't reveal our whereabouts to anyone for now. After we leave, carry out everything as usual. Watch over Yin City closely, and don't allow any mistakes. Your Majesty is leaving Yin City? 8th young Master Qi and General Zhou exclaimed at the same time. Xiao Kezi also gaped in shock, his eyes intentionally glancing at the letter in Duan Yu's hand. Duan Yu wasn't here to ask for their opinion, so he merely glanced at them when he heard their exclamations. Remember, under the pressure of his gaze, 8th young Master Qi and General Zhou could only cup their hands in acknowledgement. After walking out of His Majesty's residence, the uncouth General Zhou scratched his head and asked in confusion, 8th young Master, you are a smart person. Do you know where His Majesty is going? 8th young Master Qi looked at him speechlessly and shook his head. It's probably related to the letter His Majesty just received. There must be something urgent since His Majesty is leaving in such a hurry. 8th young Master Qi sighed. Since His Majesty has his own plans, we will just do as he says. All right. General Zhou nodded. I'll go find the Lord Garrison now. Xiao Kezi shuffled a few steps to the side of the brocade couch. He carefully opened his mouth and said, Your Majesty wants to return to the River of Forgetfulness. Today, when His Majesty received a letter from Wang Chuan, he felt uneasy and restless. Others might not know what had happened, but how could Xiao Kezi not know? His Majesty, although he was staying in Yin City, his heart had probably already flown to the River of Forgetfulness. Xiao Kezi, Duan Yu looked at him seriously and said, half a month at the earliest and a month at the latest. If this matter is over, you can return to the capital with General Zhou and the others. At night, Vice Hall Master Ghost led a group of over 10,000 disciples of the Heavenly Fate sect. They were like a flock of black crows floating in the night sky. They looked down and saw that Yin City had already fallen into a deathly silence and darkness. Apart from the starlight, there was no light in the city. They are already sleeping. Vice Hall Master Gui smiled proudly. His eyes flickered with traces of gloominess. The humiliation he suffered at the hands of the Zhangzhou emperor during the day could probably be repaid in one go. Chapter 4807. Vice Hall Master Gui could not conceal the excitement in his eyes as he gazed at the black and silent city below, the flames of exuberant interest dancing in his eyes. Very soon, this place would turn into a purgatory on earth. Prepare to attack. Vice Hall Master Gui growled and whispered to the harpies behind him who were lightly flapping their wings. This time, we can only succeed. Failure is not allowed. Yes. All the harpies readied themselves and lay dormant in midair, waiting for an opportunity to move. They were only waiting for Vice Hall Master Gui's raised hand to wantonly lower it. Then, they could swoop down and barge into the homes of the slums below to set fire and kill. Vice Hall Master Gui's heartbeat sped up, and his raised hand abruptly clenched into a fist. He could not conceal the smug expression on his face, and he was about to heavily swing his hand down. After a light whoosh, a streak of water spirit energy abruptly pierced through one of the harpies' shoulders, sending that harpies flying out of their suspended state. Vice Hall Master Gui's heart suddenly stopped, and he saw a large harpies fall out of the air like a sparrow hawk with its string cut. They crashed onto the ground with a bang, seemingly on the verge of death. This was not the worst situation. What was worse was that arrows shot over from all directions. Coupled with the sand, rocks, and soil, they attacked the large group of harpies under the effects of the catapults. Rumbling noises of tremors rang out incessantly. Vice Hall Master Gui did not expect that he would kick an iron plate when he originally wanted to pick up scraps. None of the people inside and outside Yin City were resting. They all sinisterly extinguished their lights and waited for them here. They were going to give them a good show when they arrived. Once the battle started, Yin City's garrison troops and the Tiger Cavalry would join hands and completely seal off the Destiny Sect's escape route. Vice Hall Master Gui gritted his teeth and could only lead everyone to jump down. He harshly yelled with reddened eyes, "Everyone charge with me! Kill!" Two well-trained troops dashed out of the alley. When they saw Vice Hall Master Gui's group, they charged forward with their swords without another word. The 10,000 harpies that Vice Hall Master Gui brought were unable to gain any advantage under the siege of numerous spiritual cultivators. They could only lead the Destiny Sect's disciples into the depths of the alley, fighting as they retreated. Duanyu stood at the top of the city gate tower and gazed coolly at the sky. Behind him stood Xiao Kezi and a group of shadow guards. All of them looked at their emperor with reverence. His Majesty was really meticulous in his calculations. He could even calculate this accurately. As expected, His Majesty had anticipated the sneak attack of Tianyun's group. Now that they had made the first move, the disciples of the Heavenly Fortune sect were caught unprepared. Looking at the situation, they didn't even need to wait until dawn to subdue Tianyun, that dog. Vice Hall Master Gui, Vice Hall Master. One of the Tianyun group leader hurriedly holds onto Vice Hall Leader Gui's arm and says anxiously, "Let's quickly retreat. If we don't leave now, it will be too late." Behind them were thousands of fire spirit masters. They followed them all the way and burned with all their might. It was as if their spirit energy was free as it flowed out. If one looked carefully, one could see that these 1,000 fire spirit masters were split into 10 small teams and took turns. While the first echelon was tormenting them, the people in the later echelons were either taking medicine, resting, or recovering. Who would be able to withstand their style of fighting? It was simply wretched to the extreme. As Vice Hall Master Gui fought, he suddenly discovered that there were fewer and fewer people around him who could protect him. Chapter 4808. At first, there were more than 200 people fighting with him, but now there were only 20 or so people circling around him. Not only were many of the harpies exterminated, but more than 90% of the disciples groomed by his organization were dead or injured. Vice Hall Master Gui's eyes were red as he let out a furious roar. Suddenly, a silvery white flame attacked him. If Vice Hall Master Gui hadn't dodged in time, he would have been burned to ashes. He watched as the small piece of wood that was bound by the flame was slowly being annihilated by that silver flame. For some reason, Vice Hall Master Gui's body inexplicably shuddered, and a sense of impending disaster descended in his heart. He looked up and saw a person standing across from him. He was naturally handsome and elegant. On that heavenly face, a pair of eyes seemed to be painted, revealing a few traces of cold light. Just like that, she silently looked at him. His gaze was too frightening, causing a trace of panic to rise in Vice Hall Master Gui's heart. Naturally, he recognized this man. After that Song Prefecture's emperor rushed to Yen City, the person who turned the tide and reversed the situation was him. If he hadn't hurried over to intervene, Yen City would have been taken down long ago. Despicable little brat. A dark and cold glint flashed through Vice Hall Master Gui's eyes, and his fingers twitched as he stealthily took out a flying spirit dagger from his inner world. Die! This Vice Hall Master harshly shouted, and controlled the flying dagger in his hand to swiftly slash at Duan Yu's neck without another word. This time, he had the intention of slicing open Duan Yu's neck and causing him to spurt blood on the spot. Several cold glints flitted through Duan Yu's peach blossom eyes, and he raised his hand to release a silvery white flame that tightly encircled the rapidly thrusting dagger. Vice Hall Master Gui discovered that the flame that Song Prefecture's emperor released was like a obedient and mischievous little fish that tightly wound around his dagger, preventing it from advancing even half a step. He had a bad feeling in his heart. He turned around and didn't care about the others, fleeing with a whoosh. His speed was so fast that he had probably exerted all the strength he was born with. Unfortunately, even though he fled quickly, that Song Prefecture's emperor was even faster. In the blink of an eye, Duan Yu expressionlessly blocked his path. Since you're here, stay, Duan Yu coldly stated. He raised his hand slightly and pulled out a silvery white long sword that was 3 feet long from a circle of flames revolving around his fingers. The flames burned fiercely and surrounded the silver white long sword. In an instant, it was as if a layer of mithril had covered the silver long sword, causing it to emit a resplendent light. Ghost Vice Hall Master had seen a lot of things, but he had never seen a silver white flame that was so brilliant that it was almost dazzling. When the flame landed on his body, Ghost Vice Hall Master did not feel any pain at first. It didn't seem to feel any burning pain. However, it made people's hearts tremble, and they were abnormally frightened. His hand was enveloped by the silver flames from the Demon Empyrean sword, followed by his arm, then his shoulder, head, and finally his entire body. He didn't feel any burning pain, but he was extremely flustered. It was as if he could smell the scent of death at this moment. No Ghost Vice Hall Master danced in the circle of silver white flames. In the eyes of the other Heavenly Fate disciples, their Vice Hall Master's current appearance was simply a bit comical and laughable. His entire body was encircled by the silver white flames, and he was hopping and jumping there, howling on the verge of tears. Chapter 4809. Duan Yu coldly observed this Vice Hall Master ghost from the Providence Empire, with a sneer on his lips. Disciples of the Providence Empire truly indulged in the wildest fantasies. They even wanted to occupy the entire Yin City and make it their stronghold. Where did they get the guts to act so rashly? Did they think that they didn't need to restrain themselves anymore, because they were getting more powerful? Vice Hall Master Ghost had nowhere to hide, as he was enveloped by the silvery white flames. These flames followed him like a shadow and burned silently. The silvery white light grew brighter and brighter. It completely lit up the night in this area. Vice Hall Master Ghost was like an exploding firework, as his entire body emitted a powerful silvery white light. The disciples of the Providence Empire all gaped in fright and retreated several steps in unison. Just like that, the Vice Hall Master in front of them exploded into pieces right in front of them. Like fireworks, the pieces flew everywhere and then completely disappeared. The disciples of the Providence Empire couldn't regain their senses for a long time. A moment later, they scattered like birds and beasts while shrieking in terror. Seeing them scampering away like stray dogs, Duan Yu's lightning-like eyes flickered, and he icily spat out a few words. Obliterate them all. Leave none alive. At night, Miss Ping, was startled awake by a nightmare. She hastily sat up and clutched the thin blanket as she panted heavily. In the dream just now, Yang Fengyan's face, which was shrouded in black mist, looked especially terrifying. She was startled awake by this nightmare, and her heart pounded heavily. Seeing that the sky was gradually brightening, Ping couldn't resist wanting to go out for a breather. She threw on a coat and hastily put on her clothes before opening the cabin door. However, she had just stepped out of the door when she saw an extremely fast and slender shadow flash across the ship's corridor. Ping hesitated for a moment before she couldn't resist quickening her steps and following after while holding her breath. Just now, she seemed to have caught a glimpse of Miss Chiao flashing past. Miss Chiao left the cabin so early? Ping suppressed a trace of suspicion in her eyes as she stealthily followed. Sure enough, she saw Arbor's figure. This was the aft of the ship's cabin. What was she doing here? Ping stuck to the side of the ship's wall, not daring to even breathe loudly. However, no matter how well she hid herself, she was still a person with an extremely low cultivation level. In truth, Arbor had already sensed Miss Ping the moment she walked out of the cabin door, but he was too lazy to pay attention to her. At this moment, seeing her hiding on the side of the ship, looking like she was spying on them, Arbor turned his head and cast a glance in her direction. His voice was indifferent as he said, "Since you're here, come over and say a few words." Ping jumped in fright, but she couldn't hide for even a moment. She knew that she couldn't escape, so she walked out from the corner and stood in front of Qiao Mu while trembling. She forced a smile at Arbor. "Crown Princess, why are you out so early?" The young Crown Princess glanced at Miss Ping expressionlessly. She scanned Ping face from head to toe. She saw that the dark circles under her eyes were very thick. It seemed that he had not slept well. The corners of his lips could not help but curl up slightly, as a trace of mockery flashed across his eyes. "What? Did you dream that Yang Fengyan came to take your life last night? That's why you didn't sleep well?" Ping jumped in fright and hurriedly took a step back. "Crown Princess, what are you saying?" Her voice was as weak as a mosquito's. "Why would I dream of Miss Yang? How could I? How could I?" Chapter 48:10. Let's not resort to insinuations in front of honest people. So don't pretend in front of me. Arbor impatiently waved her hand. "You want me to leave as soon as possible, don't you? Then that's fine. Get me a small boat, and I can leave immediately." Miss Ping's small face instantly became stiff and pale. She repeatedly shook her head and said, "Crown Princess, how can you sneak away like this? Our eldest young master saved you. No matter what, you should have said goodbye to eldest young master before leaving." Arbor impatiently rolled her eyes. "Are you going to give me the boat or not? I already said stop pretending. Do you think I don't know? Yang Fengyan's brain's stupid. She's just someone who can be instigated. You were the one who instigated her to make trouble for me before. Yesterday's fishing incident was most likely also instigated by you. You're so kind, using an idiot to amuse me all day. All right, hurry up and give me the boat. I'll leave immediately." Miss Ping's face was filled with fear and confusion. She vigilantly swept a glance over Arbor and immediately retreated a few steps, putting some distance between them. Seeing this, Arbor slowly approached. Her pitch-black eyes were filled with a trace of mockery. "Don't worry, I won't make trouble for you for now." Arbor coldly swept a glance over her. Miss Ping's lips trembled, but in the end, she was unable to ask the question at the bottom of her heart. Arbor knew what she wanted to ask. She wanted to ask why she still wanted to make an example out of Yang Fengyan, even though she already knew that she wasn't the mastermind. Arbor naturally wouldn't tell her that although Yang Fengyan had only been fooled by someone and became this Miss Ping's weapon, but she truly did want to kill her. If she continued to stay, it would be a great disaster. What do you want?" Miss Ping's lips trembled as she asked in a low voice. If the eldest young master knew that she was the mastermind behind the assassination of the young crown princess, he definitely wouldn't let her off so easily. Miss Ping felt a trace of eerie coldness from the bottom of her heart, and her body couldn't help but tremble. "I already said I want a boat. Come with me." Ping bit her lip hard. and took out a sealing ball from her sleeve. She seemed to have made up her mind to bring the little crown princess to the stern of the ship. Crown Princess Consort, if I give you this boat, will you be able to write off everything that happened before? Arbor looked at her deeply. Just as he was about to speak, he heard a giggling voice behind them. How can that be? You want to clear the slate with this broken ship? How can there be such a good thing in the world? This little stoic doesn't look like such a good-natured person. Arbor frowned slightly. Miss Ping who was standing beside her, couldn't help but tremble when she heard the person's voice. Ping-er's body swayed, and she almost lost her balance. Arbor turned around to take a look, and saw that guy Duga Ling walking over with a grin. His peacock green clothes complemented his handsome face, making him look radiant. Arbor couldn't help but want to ridicule this person's taste in clothes. Seeing such a big lump of green running toward her with a grin so early in the morning, it really spoiled her appetite. It was probably because the little girl's complexion looked very unsightly. Duga Ling stopped and lowered his head to look at his sleeve. He even sniffed it considerately. There didn't seem to be anything wrong with his body. Chapter 48:11. She didn't emit any strange smell from head to toe either. He really didn't know why the little girl had such a sour expression, as if she didn't want to see him at all. Arbor glanced around and sure enough, he saw young Sir Omega Kotoku following behind Duga Ling. Behind him was a short and stout winter melon, wielding the purple gold hammer. Seeing her look at them, the short and stout winter melon even grinned at Arbor very honestly. Arbor expressionlessly glanced at them before immediately retracting his gaze. Qin Xian's icy gaze landed on the item in Ping-er's hand. Inside a round sealing bead, a small boat could be seen drifting with the waves. If the crimson firmament wave hadn't been sucked into the star domain, it wouldn't have been so troublesome right now. Originally, the crimson firmament wave had also been sealed inside the sealing bead. However, because it had been highly utilized recently, Arbor couldn't be bothered to seal it again after using it last time, so he conveniently stored it inside the star domain. When the little stoic thought of this, she couldn't help but sigh. If she could use the crimson firmament wave, she probably would have fled at top speed 2 days ago. Now that she wanted to flee, she was actually caught red-handed by Omega Kotoku. It was truly awkward. Take her away. Young Sir Omega Kotoku ordered icily, and 2 black-clothed guards immediately flashed out from behind him. They took a few steps forward and walked towards Miss Ping-er, whose face was filled with terror. It was as if Ping-er's body was gripped by immense terror, and she reflexively grabbed Xiaomu's hand. She wailed miserably, "Crown Prince Consort, please help me plead for leniency." She didn't want to die yet. She didn't want to die in this kind of ghastly place. She was too familiar with the second young sir's methods. When he coldly said take her away, her future fate and path were sealed. Qin Xian coldly curled her lips at her. Her sharp gaze landed on Ping-er, as if she was wondering why she was so daring. "Crown Princess, help me, Crown Princess." Miss Ping-er cried and knelt down in front of the young Crown Princess. She reached out and hugged her leg, crying loudly, "Crown Prince Consort, I was in the wrong before. Please help me on account that we are both women." Arbor looked down at her, and then looked at Omega Kotoku warily. "What do you want?" Speaking of which, she was also very familiar with second young Master Qin. But just now, Xiaomu discovered that she was unable to discern any emotion from second young Master Qin's face that was as dry as a dry well. "As a lowly servant, she doesn't know her place," Omega Kotoku said coldly. "What's the point of keeping her? Naturally, it's to let her go to a good place." Putting aside the fact that she always stirred up trouble, she even had the audacity to want to send the little stoic away. Young Sir Omega Kotoku's fingers reflexively tightened. He seemed to have overlapped the Miss Ping-er in front of him with Shi Yongqian, the woman who was like a nightmare in his previous life. He saw Ping-er's face as Shi Yongqian's. He raised his hand, and 2 black-clothed royal guards forcefully dragged the wailing Ping-er back. Ping-er was so scared that her face was drained of color, and her entire body trembled uncontrollably. She reached out and hugged Arbor's leg, as if she had grabbed onto a life-saving straw. She hugged it tightly and didn't let go. She screamed in terror. Crown Princess, help, Crown Princess, Crown Princess. The young Crown Princess truly didn't like this woman. How could she have a good impression of a woman who secretly hid in the dark and caused trouble for her and instigated Yang Fengyan to find trouble with her? Chapter 48:12. Moreover, this woman was so comical and laughable. Speaking of which, she should have met this Miss Ping, in Sikong Planet's Qin estate. From beginning to end, she didn't have much interaction with her. She also didn't know where this Ping-er's great hostility came from, to actually incite Yang Fengyan to deal with her time and time again. Now this Miss Ping, treated her as a life-saving straw and refused to let go no matter what. The little Crown Princess inexplicably felt that she was simply crazy. When she was useful, she hugged her and cried for help. When she was useless, she wished for nothing more than to tear her apart. This woman truly was extremely capricious. How could there be such a bizarre logic in this world? Arbor simply kicked that wailing woman flying with a kick. Her aloof face didn't have much expression, and she said indifferently, "Shut up." Her head hurt from crying. Why were these women so loathsome? They only knew how to wail when they encountered something and couldn't think of a way to resolve it themselves. The little Crown Princess turned to look at Sir Omega Kotoku with a frosty expression. "Can't you speak properly?" This Omega Kotoku was becoming more and more abnormally savage. Every time she came up, if she wasn't shouting to beat him up, she was shouting to kill him. How annoying! Sir Omega Kotoku was taken aback, and his eyes suddenly lit up. "You're talking to me?" Dugaling. He suddenly felt that his young master was a bit silly. Wasn't this the obvious truth? If the little stoic wasn't talking to you, who else could she be talking to? Could it be that she was shouting at the air? Arbor was also a bit speechless. She glanced at him and tried her best to be patient as she said in a very gentle tone, "I want to leave this place as soon as possible to handle some personal matters, so I need a ship." Sir Omega Kotoku hastily persuaded. "I heard from Elder Brother that you were injured. Your divine sense isn't stable yet, so you shouldn't go out to do things. If you have something you need to do, or someone you need to find, just instruct the servants to do it as much as possible." Arbor grumpily glared at him. "I'm going to handle my personal matters. I don't like to rely on others." With a cold expression she added, "I like to do it myself." "It's good to do it personally. It's good to do it personally." Dugaling happily ran forward and said with a smile, "How about this, we'll go with you. I heard that you are looking for the missing young miss of the forgotten Chuan Dragon clan? We have more people, so it'll be easier for us to get things done." Arbor looked at him expressionlessly. "I'm not looking for her. I have nothing to do with the Wang Chuan Dragon clan anymore." Whether Long Shangyun lived or died, it no longer mattered the moment the two of them turned around. Having eldest Qin send people out to search for her for so many days, it could be considered her final act of goodwill. Since this was the will of the heavens, there was no need for her to force it. After all, the most important thing for her now was to wait for Jojo's lotus and find the whereabouts of the little Taisui. As for the others, Jojo was exhausted. She couldn't care less anymore. Dugaling blinked. "Then do you sell beautifying pills?" Arbor? Sir Omega Kotoku? What was going on? Weren't they seriously discussing matters earlier? Why did this Dugaling suddenly bring up the beautifying pill? Ever since I tried the beautifying pill for 3 days, I've been wanting to buy a permanent one from you. Dugaling's eyes gleamed as he stared at her. "Can I?" The little stoic pursed her lips and glanced at him coolly. "I can, but I'm afraid you won't be able to afford the price." Chapter 48:13. Dugaling's mouth twitched, and he hurriedly said, "Didn't we agree on it back then? After 3 days of trial, we'll buy permanent beautifying pills for 2 million per pill." "That was the price back then." Arbor coldly glanced at him. "The price has increased now." Dugaling's mouth twitched, and he carefully asked, "Xiao Qiao, how much is it now?" 10 million per pill. "Damn, why don't you go rob a bank?" Dugaling was dumbfounded, and he couldn't say anything. Instead, the short winter melon holding the purple gold hammer couldn't help but shout. Arbor expressionlessly glanced at them. It's the market price. Now, the entire capital knows that JoJo's beautifying pills are of good quality and quantity. One pill is guaranteed for 100 years. So many people are fighting to buy it, and the price has already risen to 8 million. Dugaling. Then why do I have to add another 2 million? The little crown princess glanced at him and said impatiently, I only sell 2 beautifying pills every month. It's up to you whether you want it or not. What's wrong with giving you a back door and adding 2 million as a threshold fee? You're getting a bargain. Dugaling. Yes, yes. This fellow nodded repeatedly, and he hurriedly took out money from his pocket with a grin. I have 20 million here. Give me 2. Arbor's face was expressionless as she reached out to take the spirit coin card that he offered. She nodded, took out a porcelain bottle, and tossed it to him. 1 pill can beautify for a long time. Dugaling cheerfully nodded. I still have at least 200 years to go. I think I can live for a long time. To prevent you from raising the price 100 years later, he'd better buy 1 more beforehand. Arbor glanced at him and nodded. You're smart. Dugaling. So you're really planning to raise the price 100 years later? All right, I've chatted with you guys for too long. Arbor turned around and walked to the deck. Omega Kotoka's figure flashed, and he was already beside her. Your body hasn't recovered yet. Don't mess around. Arbor dodged his hand and glared at him. You're still saying you're not putting me under house arrest? Of course not. Eldest young Master Qin's voice entered everyone's ears. When Xiaomu looked back, she saw Qin Xian, this guy, directing people to carry something over. Arbor looked at the stretcher. When they got closer, they could see clearly that there was a person lying on the stretcher, wrapped in bandages from head to toe. The little fellow's expression did not change at all, but his heart was beating wildly. Don't be nervous, Jojo. Eldest young Sir Qin glanced at her with a smile. It's not Long Shangyun. Who's nervous? The little stoic stubbornly defended herself. Who is this? You know him, eldest young Master Qin said with a smile. That Prophet Tuesday. This is probably what it means to plant flowers but not bloom. But to plant a willow unintentionally, the willow grows. Eldest young Master Qin said briskly. Look, we couldn't find Long Shangyun after so long, but we found this Prophet too instead. What do I need to find her for? Arbor asked coldly, his gaze sweeping over that bandage without any warmth. Prophet 2 probably heard her voice, and his entire body struggled a few times in agitation. However, his injuries were too severe, and his entire body was wrapped in bandages. Blood seeped out from between the bandages when he moved slightly. Arbor curled his lips mockingly and sneered, Prophet. Have you ever divined that your future self would become like this? Chapter 48:14. Tu Xinji seemed to be very agitated and kept trying to straighten her body. However, her entire body was wrapped in those white bandages until she resembled a salted fish. She couldn't even turn around, let alone sit up. This was simply wishful thinking. Arbor truly didn't expect that eldest young Sir Qin would even find Tu Xinji, since the sun had just risen. In other words, this prophet should have been found last night? What did you interrogate her about? The little stoic looked up and stared sharply at Qin Xian. The latter smiled helplessly at her. Why is a child so smart? Seeing that she was about to turn hostile, the eldest young sir hastily said, I didn't interrogate her about anything. I just wanted to know the whereabouts of the 5 keys. Without waiting for the little girl to frown and ask, eldest young Sir Qin answered obediently. The Pond Lotus Sacred Realm is guarded by the River of Forgetfulness's 5 patrician families. Each patrician family holds a key, and only with these 5 keys can the passage leading to the depths of the Pond Lotus Sacred Realm be opened. Long Huan said before that the Pond Lotus Sacred Realm automatically sealed itself off a year ago. Even if you obtain these so-called keys and open the passage, you won't be able to enter the Pond Lotus Sacred Realm's entrance. Qin Xian shrugged with a smile. Let's try. How will we know if we don't try? A faint glint flickered in the depths of his pitch-black eyes. Arbor stood by the railing at the stern of the ship. Looking from this direction, she only felt that his pitch-black eyes were bottomless. Thump, thump, thump. Tu Xinji agitatedly knocked on the wooden stretcher. Under eldest young Sir Qin's signal with his eyes, two servants reached out to help Tu Xianji up from the stretcher. Arbor reluctantly glanced at her, and clearly saw her current appearance. Her entire face was buried under the bandages, and she was currently glaring fixedly at her with a pair of cold and venomous eyes. An extremely feeble voice came out of her mouth. Arbor carefully discerned that this old woman, Tu Xianji, seemed to be calling her Mu Qiao. Hence her eyes icily gazed over, and her aura also turned chilly. Tu Xianji arched his back, as if he wanted to say something to her. The sound of something breaking rang in Arbor's ears. It took her a long time to piece together some useful information from the few words that she had said. Prophet Tu was probably saying, Shui Yuan's prediction was good. The Forgotten River Dragon clan, that had lost the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl, would eventually be drowned in the torrent of history as time passed. Without the shark pearl, the Forgotten River Dragon clan had perished. However, it was too strenuous for her to speak. She spoke intermittently for a long time, and was unable to complete a sentence. However, Arbor was already impatient to listen to her nonsense. He coldly glanced at Tu Xianji, and rejected her self-righteousness with a single sentence. You're wrong. The Wanchuan Dragon clan didn't perish because they lost the shark pearl. It was because you sought your own death. She didn't want to waste any more words with this old woman. From the looks of it, although eldest Qin and Omega Kotoku hadn't put her under house arrest, they wouldn't let her leave the ship so easily. She had to think of another way to escape. Arbor's eyes darted around before she suddenly turned to Dugaling and said, How about we have a competition? Dugaling's head instantly shook like a rattle drum. No competition, no competition. You're trying to trick me again. You want me to slap you so that you can seize the opportunity to escape? Arbor harumphed and abruptly turned her head away. She naturally wanted to find a ship to leave, so that she could wait for Jojo's lotus at the bottom of the sea. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.